Don't be disappointed. At this time, Chun Dao suddenly said, in a while, there might be a better breed of chicken. Then I guarantee you'll make a fortune. Really? Wu Han's eyes lit up. Certainly. Chun Dao nodded. As the number of yellow-feathered chickens is increasing, Chun Dao estimates that he will be able to start selling yellow-feathered chickens in small quantities after a while. In fact, a small number of yellow-feathered hens are getting old every day and no longer lay eggs, thus losing their value in being raised. However, Chun Dao did not choose to sell these hens, but killed them directly for their meat, trying his best to ensure that his family had enough meat to make them stronger. That's great, Wu Han said with a smile. Then I'll wait for good news from Brother Chun. No problem. Chun Dao nodded, and then said, Brother Wu, it's been a great honor for you to come here this time. You must stay at my house today. No problem. Wu Han agreed immediately after receiving the good news. He first went outside and asked Zhang Ming and others to move the food to the kitchen of Chun Dao's house. Then everyone sat together in the living room of Chun Dao's house and chatted. It is worth mentioning that each person has a few steamed buns and a cup of hot water at hand. The steamed buns are regarded as desserts, and the hot water is regarded as tea, which can be regarded as a morning tea. The food at Chun Dao's is really good. A young man, brought by Wu Han, looked at the steamed bun in his hand and couldn't help but sigh to the people around him. They, who helped Wu Han with his work, could eat better at Wu Han's house. Usually, they ate porridge made of rice bran powder. But at Chun Dao's house, they used steamed buns to entertain guests, and they could eat as much as they wanted. This made the young man extremely envious. Having steamed buns every day, this is probably what the landlord's life would be like, right? Isn't it? It's not just the Chun Dao family. Many villagers in Chunjia village can eat steamed buns every day. When we came here just now, weren't those villagers queuing outside to get steamed buns? I'm thinking of moving to Chunjia village. I can earn enough to eat steamed buns every day by just working hard. I can't find such a good job in the county town. Yes. The young men brought by Wu Han expressed their envy in low voices, while Chun Dao talked with Wu Han to learn about the situation in the county. For a moment, the whole living room was filled with harmony. In the afternoon, Wu Han and others set out to leave Chunjia village. At the outer gate of Taiping County, Zhang He stood in front of a dilapidated house, squinting his eyes at the city gate guarded by soldiers. Brother Zhang. The skinny monkey stood beside Zhang He and said, It's already 3 p.m., and in less than an hour, the soldiers at the city gate will be changing shifts. Zhang He nodded gently and said, Are you all ready, brothers? Ready. The skinny monkey said solemnly, Brothers are already lying in ambush near the city gate. As long as we shout the slogan of doing great things together, the brothers will rush out together. Very good. Zhang He turned his head to look at the setting sun, a hint of danger in his eyes. As the sun gradually set, it was finally time for the soldiers guarding the city to change shifts. A soldier in armor, with a standard-issue saber at his waist, stamped his foot and said impatiently, It's so cold. Why hasn't the relief officer arrived yet? What's the rush? Another soldier said, The men guarding the city gates at night don't get much to gain, so it's understandable that they're a little lazy. There are a total of 20 soldiers guarding the city in Taiping County. These 20 soldiers are all the military forces of Taiping County. Among them, 10 people are responsible for guarding the city gate during the day, 2 people are guarding the gate, and 8 people are on the city wall to provide support. Another group of 10 people are responsible for guarding after the city gates are closed at night. Compared with the work at night, the work during the day is obviously easier, and there is more money to be made. Required to enter the city will not be paid to the county government, but will actually fall into the hands of the soldiers guarding the city. Therefore, the job of guarding the city gate during the day is a very lucrative job for these soldiers guarding the city. Of course, this money does not belong only to the 2 soldiers guarding the city gate. They also need to share some with the brothers who provide support on the city wall. In addition, the brothers on duty at night also need to get a share. But even so, the biggest share still belongs to the 2 of them. The daily entrance fees collected are enough for the 2 brothers to make a fortune. It is also because of this that the soldiers on duty at night will feel somewhat resentful and will come to work a little later every time they change shifts. Here I come. But at this moment, the soldier who complained first saw his brother who came to change shifts, and a smile immediately appeared on his face. He had earned a lot of city entrance fees today, and after changing shifts, he planned to go to the brothel in the city to have some fun. Thinking of the graceful figure of the brothel girl, The soldier was about to step forward to hand over to the soldier who was taking over shifts, but at this moment, a dozen ragged refugees surrounded him. "Sir, please be kind and give us something to eat." "Master, I'm starving. Can you give me something to eat?" "Master June, please. Give me something to eat." Zhang Yi led a dozen young men, including Shouho, pretending to be weak and harmless as they slowly approached the soldiers guarding the city who were about to change shifts, begging them to give them some food. "Get out of here." The soldier, however, waved his hands impatiently as if to shoo away flies. These refugees were covered in dirt and stinked, which instantly dissipated the desire that had just risen in his lower abdomen. "Military master, please be kind." Zhang He approached the soldier slowly but firmly, praying as he got closer. However, the soldier remained indifferent and even cursed. "You stinking beggars, get out of here now." As soon as he finished speaking, the soldier felt a sense of emptiness around his waist. But Zhang had already pulled out the knife from his waist with extremely fast movements. "What are you going to do?" The soldier's pupils shrank, and before he could react, Zhang He slashed at his neck with a knife. The sharp blade cut through the flesh, and a line of blood instantly appeared on the soldier's neck. He couldn't even scream, and fell to the ground, covering his throat and sobbing. Chapter 98. Strong on the outside, but weak on the inside. Another soldier guarding the city gate was shocked and stunned. He never expected that these refugees would be so bold as to kill the soldiers defending the city. This is a crime of rebellion. It's a crime punishable by the death of 9 generations of your family. The shocked soldier felt a pain in his neck. It turned out that the skinny monkey pulled out the knife from his waist, slashed his neck with it, and ended his life. What's going on? As soon as they walked out of the city gate, the 2 soldiers who were preparing to change shifts were stunned. They had just walked out of the city gate when they encountered this unexpected situation, which made them unable to react for a while. But right now, there was no time for them to react. Zhang He didn't feel any discomfort after killing a soldier with 1 sword. He had seen too many dead people on his way from Liangzhou. Killing a soldier was just a matter of no psychological burden for him. "Brothers, let's do something great together." Zhang He shouted loudly, and in an instant, shouts of killing were heard. A large number of young and strong men who had been lying in ambush near the city gate rushed out. Zhang He and Shouho each swung a sword and killed the 2 soldiers who came to relieve the shift. Then, they led the young and strong men into the city. What's going on? Is that Zhang He and his men? How did they kill the soldiers guarding the city? This is a crime of rebellion. The whole clan will be executed. It has to be said that feudal society was very good at cultivating obedient citizens. When the refugees saw Zhang He killing the soldiers defending the city, the first thing they thought of was rebellion. And their first reaction was fear of the crime of rebellion and the execution of 9 generations of their clan. But they didn't react at this time. Most of their families had already starved to death. Even if they killed 9 generations of their clan, only a few of their family members would be killed. Who cares? At this moment, a young man spat and said, "I've had enough of this life of hunger and cold every day. Now that the city gates are wide open and there's no one guarding them, it's a good time for us to enter the city." After saying that, the refugee strode out and rushed straight into the city gate. He was already alone, and death was not something he was afraid of. If he could have a full meal before dying, what would it matter? "We're going to." The young man's actions seemed to inspire more people, and a large number of refugees threw away their fears and rushed straight into the city. A large number of refugees heard the news and poured into the city like a tide. At this time, Zhang He had already led hundreds of young and strong men to the top of the city wall. The noble person who contacted them before had already said that the first thing they needed to do after entering the city was to eliminate all the soldiers guarding the city. At this time, the soldiers guarding the city wall also reacted and were holding knives to confront Zhang He and others. "What are you going to do?" "Rebellion." Lu Yu, who was in charge of all the soldiers defending the city, glared at Zhang He and the others and said, "Rebellion is a crime punishable by the extermination of all 9 generations of your clan. Do you want your entire clan to be exterminated? Retreat now, and I can report you to the county magistrate and have you spared." Lu Yu's words perfectly explained what it meant to appear strong but be weak inside. Facing hundreds of refugees with red eyes, Lu Yu had to admit that he was panicking. He had never taken these refugees seriously, believing them to be pariahs. He He would not dare to resist, even if it meant starvation. He even personally used a small bag of grain to exchange for a 15-year-old girl from a refugee. That girl had now been tortured to death by him, and her parents outside the city knew nothing about it. Whenever Liu Yu thought of this, he would feel a sense of joy in his heart, as if the animal nature in his heart had been liberated. In fact, Liu Yu knew that even if he told the girl's parents outside the city that he had tortured their daughter to death, they would be unable to do anything to him. He was well aware of the weakness and powerlessness of these refugees, but when these refugees rushed up to the city wall with red eyes, Liu Yu was scared. Only at this moment did he understand that these refugees were not weak, nor could they be bullied at will. If they were provoked, they would dare to draw their swords and kill people. You are Liu Yu, the commander of the city defense, right? Zhang He, who had already asked Skinny Monkey to find out the man's name, stared at Liu Yu and said, 10 days ago, you beat up my brothers. One of us is still lying on the bed, on the ground. 5 days ago, you killed 2 of us who were begging for food from you. Now it's time to settle the score. Brothers, follow me and kill. Zhang He roared, holding a knife, and rushed towards Liu Yu and other soldiers. The refugees behind him also rushed forward fearlessly. They only had 4 stolen knives as weapons, and most of them were holding weapons like wooden sticks. However, their fearless appearance frightened Liu Yu and other soldiers. But the knife was already at their necks, and Liu Yu and the others had no choice but to fight back. Die for me, Liu Yu slashed with his sword, aiming straight at Zhang He's head, but Zhang He reacted extremely quickly and dodged to the side. Puff! The blade cut a big hole in Zhang He's shirt, but Zhang He ignored it and slashed at Liu Yu's chest with his backhand. Zhang! The knife hit the armor on his chest, but was bounced off by the hard armor. Zhang He was stunned and remembered that Liu Yu was wearing armor. When he attacked the soldiers guarding the city before, he always cut their necks when they were caught off guard, which perfectly avoided the defense of the armor and made the armor useless. But at this time, Liu Yu was in a state of full readiness, and it was not so easy to chop his neck. Oh! Liu Yu, realizing that Zhang He couldn't hurt him, laughed out loud. A few lowly people want to rebel? That's just wishful thinking. As soon as he finished speaking, Liu Yu took advantage of Zhang's daze and slashed with a knife. Puff! Zhang He reacted extremely quickly and retreated rapidly, but was still cut by the blade on his arm, and blood was instantly dripping from his arm. Brother Zhang! The skinny monkey who had killed a soldier with one knife quickly ran to Zhang He and asked with concern, Are you okay? Zhang He glanced at his bloody right arm and said, It's okay. Let's kill him together. Good. So Zhang He and Liu Yu took their knives and started fighting with them. Liu Yu was not a warrior. At most, he was a soldier, so he was stronger than ordinary people. However, it was still very difficult for Zhang He and the others to fight with him. Because the armor on Liu Yu's body had too strong a defense, their swords could not cause any damage to Liu Yu when they hit the armor. Instead, Liu Yu's sword posed a great threat to them. Therefore, the two could only dodge Liu Yu's attacks as much as possible, fight with Liu Yu, consume Liu Yu's physical strength as much as possible, and look for opportunities to make a fatal blow. Chapter 99 Loss of Order. While Zhang He and Shouho were fighting with Liu Yu, other refugees on the city wall also started a life-and-death struggle, with a dozen soldiers defending the city. Hundreds of refugees had only simple weapons in their hands, and it was obviously not an easy battle against a dozen soldiers wearing armor and holding standard sabers. However, because of their large numbers and fearlessness, the refugees eventually gained the upper hand and quickly killed the soldiers on the city wall one by one. Well done, brothers! Zhang He, who had been keeping an eye on another battlefield, couldn't help but get excited. With all the soldiers on the city wall killed, Liu Yu was trapped. No matter how thick his armor was or how sharp his weapons were, he couldn't defeat so many of them. It's over. While Zhang He was excited, Liu Yu felt despair in his heart and could not help but plead, My dear man, we have no grudges against each other. Why do we have to fight to the death? No grudges or hatred? Zhang He sneered. When you killed my brother, why didn't you say you had no grudge against him? After saying that, Zhang He shouted, Brothers, kill! In an instant, all the refugees who had gathered around rushed forward and hacked Liu Yu to death on the ground with their swords. Brother Zhang, are you okay? Seeing that Zhang He was completely dead, the refugees noticed Zhang He's bloody right arm. At this time, the sleeve of Zhang He's right arm was already stained red with blood, and his face was extremely pale, looking a little scary. I'm Phoenix. Zhang he tore a piece of cloth from the dead Lu Yu's body, bandaged the wound, and then asked, "How are the casualties among the brothers?" "Very bad." The skinny monkey, who had already quickly counted the number of men, said grimly, "The soldiers defending the city were all wearing armor and had strong defenses. As a result, the casualties among us brothers were extremely tragic. A total of 30 brothers were killed and 20 were injured." Hearing this, Zhang he showed a trace of painful self-blame on his face. These brothers trusted him so much, but he was unable to keep these brothers alive. "Brother Zhang, don't blame yourself. Since the brothers are willing to do this with you, they are naturally prepared to die." The skinny monkey seemed to notice the look on Zhang he's face and comforted him. "Yes, Brother Zhang, don't blame yourself. Those brothers who died certainly didn't want Brother Zhang to blame himself. Brother Zhang, let's talk about what we should do next." Others also spoke up, and their consolation actually eased Zhang he's self-blame a lot. Zhang he walked slowly to the edge of the city wall, looking at the county town barely illuminated by the afterglow of the setting sun, his eyes flashing. As the city gates opened, a large number of refugees rushed into the city. These refugees obviously did not have a clear goal like Zhang he and others. After entering the city, these hungry refugees instantly lost their minds and broke into houses and shops in groups of 3 or 2, looting the food and money inside. At this time, the sounds of shouting and killing continued in the county town. The area near the city gate had completely lost order. The refugees had lost their minds and completely let go of the beastly nature in their hearts. They would kill the men in the house who tried to resist, and the women. You don't have to think about what the outcome would be. "Big brother," a young man following Zhang, he looked down greedily and said, "Should we go grab some too?" Not only the young and strong man, but others also looked greedily at the food looted by the refugees below, wishing they could go down and rob it themselves. They had not eaten a full meal for a long time and could not bear the temptation of food. "Do you want to die?" After scanning the crowd, Zhang he said coldly, "If we help you, we still have a chance of survival. If we join them in a robbery, we will definitely not live to see tomorrow." Why didn't Zhang he dare to kill the soldiers defending the city before and enter the city, but dares to do it now? Because killing the soldiers defending the city was equivalent to rebellion, which was a sure death. And now, the nobleman in the city made him a promise. As long as he can do what the nobleman asked him to do, the fact that he killed the soldiers guarding the city and broke into the city will be covered up for him, and he and his brothers will be given a legitimate identity so that they no longer need to be refugees. Although working for a noble person is extremely dangerous, there is still a glimmer of hope. Moreover, the noble will also give them a legitimate identity, and even bestow upon them medicinal herbs, giving them the opportunity to become warriors. Be rational. Skinny Monkey also reminded everyone in time, robbery like them is no different from rebellion. There's only one way to go, death waiting for us. Only by following Brother Zhang and completing the nobleman's instructions can we survive. Zhang he and Shouho's words curbed everyone's greed in time, and they all regained their sanity. Brother Zhang is right. We absolutely cannot go and steal food. Just follow Brother Zhang. No one is allowed to act on their own. Brother Zhang, you decide what to do. We'll all listen to you. Looking at the eager faces of his brothers, Zhang he pondered for a moment and said, "Those who are strong, put on the armor of the soldiers guarding the city. Let's go and do something great together." Soon, Zhang he picked out a dozen strong men and had them wear the armor stripped from the soldiers defending the city. Then everyone went down the city wall and headed straight for the wealthy area in the city. But even Zhang he himself didn't notice that while his team was advancing, 2 figures covered in black night clothes mixed into his team at some point. I never thought that a county magistrate would wear night clothes, something only thieves would wear. A man in black, whose face was covered with a black veil, leaving only a pair of eyes exposed, said that this man was none other than Li Hu, the owner of the Fuhu boxing gym. The man in black beside him was naturally the county magistrate, Su Jiwen. Master Li's words are a bit biased. Su Jiwen chuckled and said, "Anyone wearing night clothes might not necessarily be a thief. They could also be a warrior like Master Li." Oh, Li Hu didn't take it seriously. Instead, he turned his head and looked towards the city gate behind him, where the sounds of killing and shouting were endless. His brows furrowed slightly beneath his veil. "County Master, is this what you expected to happen?" "No." Su Jiwen shook his head. He was the benefactor Zhang He and the others had been talking about. After contacting Zhang He and the others and gaining their trust, he arranged for Zhang He and the others to carry out their plan to eradicate the Zhu family. But unfortunately, plans cannot keep up with changes. He had never expected that Zhang He and others rushing into the city would cause such a change and create such chaos in the city. Chapter 100 True Portrait. How does the county magistrate plan to deal with these refugees who have rushed into the city? Li Hu asked. We can only deal with it later. Su Jiwen sighed and said, everything requires trade-offs. Right now, eradicating the Zhu family is our biggest priority. As for these refugees, it won't be too late to deal with them later after we've dealt with the Zhu family. At this moment, Su Jiwen couldn't help but feel that the power he could mobilize was too limited. Otherwise, these refugees would never have caused such a big mess. Grandpa, what happened outside? Inside by Kaitang, Su Qiaoshi and Su Shihua were each holding a door, listening to the shouting and screaming coming from outside, with terrified expressions on their faces. As soon as Bai Kaitang closed its door, they heard endless shouting and screaming outside, which made the two men terrified. They held the door tightly, fearing that someone would break in. There must be some trouble in the city. Su Shihua lowered his voice and said, Qiaoshi, you must hold the door shut. Don't let anyone in. Su Shihua, who has lived for most of his life, has extremely rich life experience. He knows very well that if the thieves outside rush into Bai Kaitang, he, an old man, will at most die. But his young and beautiful granddaughter, Su Qiaoshi, will not be so lucky. In a place without order, beautiful women often end up in a very miserable way. Being sent back and forth like goods is considered a relatively good ending. I know, Grandpa. Su Qiaoshi's pretty face was full of solemnity. Although she was young, she knew what would happen to her if a thief broke in, because at this moment, there were not only shouts and screams coming from outside the door, but also a woman's wailing. When Su Qiaoshi thought about what would happen to her after the thieves broke into Bai Kaitang, she couldn't help but shudder. She gritted her teeth and held the door tightly. Fortunately, Bai Kaitang is a drugstore with good profits after all, and his door is made extremely solid. Perhaps the thieves outside felt that the door of Bai Kaitang was difficult to break open, so they did not choose to break into Bai Kaitang by force. This also made Su Qiaoshi and Su Shihua breathe a sigh of relief. This world is so chaotic. Listening to the footsteps gradually fading away outside the door, Su Shihua wiped the sweat from his forehead and couldn't help but sigh. This was the first time in his life that he had experienced such a thrilling thing. Grandpa, what happened outside? Su Qiaoshi also wiped the cold sweat from her smooth forehead and said with lingering fear, it must be refugees from outside the city who broke into the city. Su Shihua guessed that, looking around Taiping County, there was no one else who could cause such a big mess except the refugees outside the city. Refugees outside the city. A trace of thought flashed across Su Qiaoshi's beautiful eyes. She had seen the refugees outside the city from afar several times. In her impression, those refugees were all pitiful people. They left their homes and came to Taiping County just to find a way to survive. I didn't expect those seemingly pitiful refugees would become so terrifying after entering the city. Taiping County is a classical city. Two straight avenues intersecting horizontally and vertically divide the county into 4 square areas. The 2 areas in the north are East City and West City, while the 2 areas in the south are the wealthy area and residential area. The Fuhu boxing gym is located in the wealthy area, and the Zhu family, one of the 3 major families in the city, is also located in the wealthy area. At this time, in the Zhu family's 3-story courtyard, whether it was the front yard, the backyard, or the living room, they were all filled with tables. Lanterns were hung on the eaves, and the orange light that fell down illuminated the entire house as if it were dusk. The beautiful maids shuttled between the dining tables, delivering exquisite dishes to the living room in a timely manner. In the living room, at the largest dining table, the elderly and frail Zhu family patriarch, Zhu Fuxiang, was accepting the congratulations from the guests with a smile on his face. Grandpa Zhu, I wish you a long life, and may you become younger and younger as you grow older. A young man offered his blessing with a smile on his face. His name was Yuan Qing, and he was from the younger generation of the Yuan family. He came here today to attend the 90th birthday celebration of Zhu Fuxiang, the old patriarch of the Zhu family, on behalf of the Yuan family. I also wish Grandpa Zhu a happy smile and a long life. Feng Yong, a young man at another table, also offered his blessings. He came on behalf of the Feng family. Although the three major families in Taiping County occasionally had some minor frictions, they mostly cooperated in the general direction. Therefore, on Zhu Fuxiang's 90th birthday, both families sent their younger generations to attend to add glory to the Zhu family. Okay. Although Zhu Fuxiang is old, he is in good spirits. At this moment, he is looking at the young people who are sending him blessings with great joy, and his smile almost never stops. On the dining table were exquisite dishes, most of which were meat dishes. If such a table of dishes were placed in Qinjia village, the villagers would scramble for them. However, in the living room of the Zhu family, very few people were interested in these dishes. Who among those who could come to attend the Zhu family's old man's 90th birthday was not a wealthy and powerful person? Although these dishes were exquisite, they usually ate a lot, so they were not so hungry that they would eat too much. The rich live in luxury while the poor freeze to death on the streets. The rich live in extravagance and indulge in pleasures, while the refugees outside the city cannot even get enough rice bran to eat. This is the truest portrayal of this world. Thank you all for coming to my father's birthday party. At this time, Zhu Ming, the current head of the Zhu family, stood up with his wine glass raised. Everyone, drink this glass to the brim together. As soon as Zhu Ming spoke, everyone in the living room stood up and raised their glasses. Master Zhu has spoken, so naturally we must obey. A wealthy middle-aged man said this with a smile, and the others also flattered him. So everyone drank the wine in their cups. Kill! But at this moment, a cry of killing was heard outside. Everyone was stunned, but Zhu Ming reacted quickly and subconsciously wanted to send the butler to check outside. Only then did he realize that he had already sent the butler to the gate to greet the guests. Just as Zhu Ming reacted, Zhang He, who had killed the housekeeper with a single blow, looked at the open door outside the Zhu family's gate. A smile spread across his face. Brothers, success or failure depends on this one move. Follow me and kill. As he spoke, Zhang He was the first to step into the Zhu family's gate, and the others followed. As soon as they entered the Zhu family, everyone couldn't help but widen their eyes. However, at this time, there were tables placed in the front yard. Under the light of the lanterns, everyone could see the food on the tables clearly. Meat, all meat. A young man looked at the food on the table closest to him, with a glint of desire in his eyes. He had never seen so much delicious meat in his life. Chapter 101 House. It's all meat. So much meat. Damn it. We can't even get enough to eat rice bran outside the city. But the Zhu family eats nothing but meat, even the food they feed their guests. The refugees who followed Zhang He into the Zhu family were stunned. Most of them had barely eaten white rice. And yet, the dishes that appeared before their eyes were all hard dishes, the kind they had not eaten in decades of their lives. This made them forget for a moment what they were here for. What are you doing here? Just as everyone was stunned, the Zhu family guest closest to Zhang He stood up and glared at the ragged refugees. Today is the day of the old man of the Zhu family's wedding. Who allowed you in? Get out. Obviously, this person did not see the situation clearly and only thought that Zhang He and his group were beggars who came to beg for food or refugees who had sneaked into the city. Zhang He's response to this person was quite simple. He swung his knife back and cut open the person's neck. Idiot! Looking at the slowly falling corpse, Zhang He sneered. For a fool who couldn't see the situation clearly, his death would be in vain. High-pitched screams echoed throughout the Zhu family's three-story house. Looking at the slowly falling body, the maids in the front yard who were responsible for taking care of the guests let out sharp cries. At this time, the guests in the front yard finally realized that this group of people were not those weak beggars or refugees who could be bullied, but murderers who dared to pick up knives and kill people. The guests immediately became panicked, stood up from the table, and fled in a panic. Because the front door was blocked by Zhang He and others, they could not run out and could only run towards the living room. Murder, run. Run. Someone broke into the Zhu family, run. Looking at the guests who were fleeing in panic, a trace of disdain flashed across Zhang He's face. In the past, he was in awe of these wealthy people, but only now did he realize that these rich people were no different from them, the refugees, and were even worse than the refugees. He, Zhang He, a first-class refugee, dared to face death, but these well-dressed rich people could only run away in fear. Brothers, follow me and kill. Zhang he shouted loudly, awakening his dazed subordinates, and then led a dozen people in armor as the vanguard and rushed into the living room like cutting melons and vegetables. Zhu Ming and the others in the living room already knew what had happened. Seeing Zhang He, dressed in armor and leading a team, rushing in, Zhu Ming asked with an unpleasant expression, "Who are you?" Zhu Ming was in a terrible mood. Today was a big day for the Zhu family, but thugs came to their home to kill people. This undoubtedly made him feel extremely embarrassed, and also made the Zhu family lose all face. "Kill your people." Zhang he didn't even bother to talk to Zhu Ming anymore. He shouted to his men, Kill everyone in the Zhu family. How dare you?" At this time, a young man jumped out and angrily scolded Zhang He. "This is the Zhu family's territory. How can you show off your power?" "Oh." Zhang He looked at this person with interest and asked, "Who are you?" "Yuan family, Yuan Qing." The young man proudly announced his name, thinking that the reputation of the Yuan family would scare Zhang He away. However, Zhang He just said, "Oh," and said, "I know. You will die later." Yuan Qing was dumbfounded. He thought that mentioning the name of the Yuan family would make Zhang He more afraid, but he never expected that Zhang He was a fool and did not take the Yuan family seriously at all. Okay. Zhu Ming, however, laughed out loud in his anger, saying, "I've lived half my life, and this is the first time I've heard someone say they want to wipe out everyone in my Zhu family." To be honest, Zhu Ming did not take the group of people in front of him seriously, because although they were wearing armor and holding sabers, none of them were warriors. As an 8th grade peak warrior, his observation ability is still very strong. He saw that Zhang He and others were all pale and thin and looked like they were not full. It was obvious that they could not be warriors. In that case, then you should die first. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhu Ming took a step forward, clenched his right fist, and punched Zhang He's neck, which was not protected by armor. Zulfast! Zhang He's pupil shrank, and before he could even react, Zhu Ming's fist had already enlarged before his eyes. Is this a warrior? Zhang He was already in despair. Even if he wanted to react, it was too late. He could only blame himself for being too fond of leading the charge, which led to him standing at the front of the team, making it easy for Zhu Ming to attack him. Just when Zhang He was in despair, Zhu Ming's eyes fixed. He forcibly retracted his fist and retreated repeatedly. After retreating 10 steps in a row, Zhu Ming stopped and looked at the 2 men in black who suddenly appeared beside Zhang He. Just when he was about to kill Zhang He, the 2 men in black suddenly appeared beside Zhang He, forcing Zhu Ming to retract his fist. Otherwise, he had a hunch that the 2 men in black would definitely kill him before he could kill Zhang He. "Who are you two?" Zhu Ming looked solemnly at the 2 men in black on Zhang He's left and right. Warriors have a very keen sense of danger. He could feel that these 2 men in black had the ability to threaten his life. "I'm the one who killed you." The man in black standing on Zhang He's left, Su Jiwen, directly quoted Zhang He's words. Zhang He exhaled heavily and thanked them sincerely. "Thank you both for saving my life." At that moment, Zhang He almost thought he was dead. If he was hit by Zhu Ming's punch, his neck would probably be broken immediately and his breathing would stop. Fortunately, 2 men in black suddenly appeared and forced Zhu Ming to retreat. Although Zhang He didn't know the identities of the 2 men in black, they saved him after all. What the man in black on the left just said also showed that their purpose was the same as his, and they also came to kill the Zhu family. 2. Facing the 2 men in black, Zhu Ming was clearly no longer as arrogant as before. Instead, he said politely, "My Zhu family is considered a kind family in Taiping County. If I have accidentally offended you in the past, I, Zhu Ming, would like to apologize to you too. How about we make peace? Good house." A disdainful smile appeared on Su Jiwen's face hidden under the veil. The Zhu family is a good family? This is simply the biggest joke in the entire Taiping County. Which of the 3 big families in Taiping County, the Yuan family, the Fang family, and the Zhu family, did not get rich by plundering and robbery? Even many human traffickers in the county are involved with these 3 families. Chapter 102 Ridiculous. As far as Su Jiwen knows, there are many refugees outside the city who sell their children. Their children are sold to the 3 major families. But don't think that these children can become members of the 3 major families by being sold to the 3 major families or become maids and have a full meal. In fact, most of these children sold to the 3 major families will be sent to brothels. After a short period of training, they will start to receive customers and make money. As for the remaining few, They will become slaves of the Zhu family and be beaten and scolded by the masters of the Zhu family at any time. Only a few of them can survive successfully in the Zhu family. Zhu Ming called his family a good family, so he could only deceive ordinary people. But it was ridiculous for him to deceive Su Jiwen. If your Zhu family is a kind family, then I will be the greatest philanthropist in the world, Su Jiwen said with a sneer. Zhu Ming only felt that Su Jiwen's voice sounded somewhat familiar, but for a moment he could not remember where he had heard a similar voice. He also absolutely could not connect the man in black in front of him with the county magistrate Su Jiwen, because in his opinion, the county magistrate Su Jiwen was simply a weak scholar, and it was impossible for him to have any connection with the black-clothed warrior in front of him. Facing the aggressive men in black, Zhu Ming simply spat in their faces and said, "My two good men, my Zhu family's reputation for kindness is well known throughout Taiping County. How can we not be kind?" "Oh," Su Jiwen sneered, knowing that Zhu Ming was stalling for time. So he said to Li Hu, "Go ahead, solve it as soon as possible." As soon as Su Jiwen finished speaking, Li Hu rushed forward and punched Zhu Ming in the face. Su Jiwen continued to say to Zhang He, "Leave the warriors to us. You guys deal with the others. Become." So, Zhang He took up his saber and started slaughtering people in the living room. The warriors of the Zhu family were furious and wanted to step forward to stop him, but Su Jiwen stopped them. Two nephews. Zhu Ming, who was being beaten back by Li Hu, saw the Zhu family members being hacked down one after another. He couldn't help but get angry and said to Yuan Qing and Fang Yong, "Please help us." "Don't worry, uncle. We will never let these thugs get away with it." Yuan Qing was the first to respond to Zhu Ming. As a member of the younger generation of the Yuan family, he was well equipped with martial arts skills. He took a step forward and was about to rush to Zhang He to kill him. But at this moment, a fist enlarged in Yuan Qing's eyes. Bang! Su Jiwen arrived quickly and punched Yuan Qing in the face, causing his nose to collapse instantly. Then blood and tears gushed out of Yuan Qing's nose and eyes. The nose is one of the most vulnerable parts of the human body. After this punch, Yuan Qing felt so much pain that he almost fainted and fell to the ground with stars in his eyes. At the same time that Yuan Qing was knocked down, Fang Yong also took action. He took the opportunity to come behind Su Jiwen and punched Su Jiwen in the back. Oh, that's a little clever. Su Jiwen seemed to have eyes on his back. He bent down and blocked Fang Yong's sneak attack. Seeing this, Fang Yong couldn't help but look grim. "Seventh-rank warriors, who are you?" As a descendant of the Fang family, Fang Yong was very familiar with the strength of the warriors in Taiping County. He knew very well that there were only a few 7th-grade warriors in the entire Taiping County. In this situation, the sudden appearance of these two men in black seemed extremely surprising. "You're gonna die. Why do you still need to know so much?" Su Jiwen shook his head, rushed out the next moment, and punched Fang Yong in the chest. Fast, too fast. As a 9th-grade warrior, Fang Yong didn't even have time to react before Su Jiwen punched him in the chest. In an instant, Fang Yong felt a sweetness in his throat and blood spurted out of his mouth. He flew backwards and fell to the ground, unconscious. At the same time, wailing sounds continued to ring out throughout the living room. No matter whether it was the people of the Zhu family or the guests who came to celebrate Zhu Fuxiang's birthday, they could not escape the butcher knife of Zhang He and a group of refugees. Kill! Zhang He's eyes were filled with murderous intent. When he killed the first person, he felt somewhat touched and lamented the fragility of life. But now that he had killed so many people, he no longer had any other feelings and just wanted to keep killing. On the other side, Li Hu was punching Zhu Ming vigorously, leaving him with no power to fight back. From time to time, he would be hit by Li Hu's fists, and blood would flow from the corners of his mouth. Master Zhu. After killing all the 9th-rank warriors of the Zhu family, Su Jiwen looked at Zhu Fuxiang and said, "I heard that you were once a 7th-rank warrior in Taiping County. I wonder how you feel when you see this scene now." The smile on Zhu Fuxiang's face had long since disappeared, leaving only a gloomy look. Watching the Zhu family members being slaughtered one by one, he, as the previous head of the Zhu family, felt disheartened. Yes, he was indeed one of the top warriors in Taiping County, possessing the strength of the 7th rank. Now he is 90 years old, and his energy and blood have long been declining. Now, he even needs someone to support him to walk, so how could he possibly fight with a warrior? "Why are you doing this?" Zhu Fuxiang stared at Su Jiwen intently. His gaze seemed to penetrate the veil and see Su Jiwen's appearance clearly. The murderous intent in his eyes was as surging as a tsunami, and he wished he could eat the flesh and blood of the man in black in front of him. If he were 30 years younger, Zhu Fuxiang would definitely rush up and kill this man without hesitation. You don't need to know. Su Jiwen stepped forward, grabbed Zhu Fuxiang's neck with his 5 fingers, and then twisted it gently. Crack! The sound of broken bones was heard. Zhu Fuxiang's neck twisted, and he completely lost his breath. Father! Seeing his biological father die, Zhu Ming couldn't help but let out a cry of grief, and his defensive movements froze. Liu did not miss this opportunity. He seized the gap in Zhu Ming's defense and punched Zhu Ming in the chest. Crack! The full force attack of 7th grade warrior was naturally extraordinary. Zhu Ming's chest bones were broken instantly. However, Liu did not end his attack, but instead threw several punches in a row. Crack! 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 The crisp sound of bones breaking continued to ring out, and in a moment, Zhu Ming's chest was completely sunken. His lifeless eyes stared at the man in black opposite him, as if he wanted to remember this man's appearance firmly. Unfortunately, the black veil completely covered Li Hu's face, leaving only a pair of eyes exposed. No matter how wide Zhu Ming's eyes opened, he could not see Li Hu's appearance clearly through the black veil. Puff! Zhang He swung his sword and knocked the last person in the living room to the ground. His armor and the blade had turned blood red, but the murderous look in his eyes became even more intense. Chapter 103, Total Annihilation. There's someone in the backyard. Zhang He looked towards the backyard with a fierce look on his face. He had just noticed that many maids of the Zhu family had run to the backyard. In addition, there was no female member of the family in the living room, which meant that the female members of the family should be hiding in the backyard. The backyard should be where the Zhu family's women are. Su Jiwen asked, "What are you going to do with these women?" Zhang He's fierce look faded slightly after hearing Su Jiwen's words. After a moment's contemplation, he said, "Those who achieve great things don't care about trivial matters. I plan to kill them all." Zhang He knew very well that if what he did today were to be spread out, he would definitely not be able to stay in Taiping County. Among the women in the backyard, many maids had seen his appearance, so he had to kill them. Very good. Su Jiwen nodded. Then take your men in and kill them. After saying that, Su Jiwen added, "Remember, you can kill people, but you absolutely cannot do anything else." I know. Zhang Yi nodded and led a dozen armored brothers into the backyard. Soon, women's screams were heard from the backyard. All the women hiding in the backyard were killed by Zhang He. A quarter of an hour later, He brought his men back to the living room. Su Jiwen immediately said, "People should be here soon. Leave as soon as possible." As they spoke, Su Jiwen and Li Hu walked out of the Zhu family first, and Zhang He quickly followed with his brothers. After walking a little further away from the Zhu family, Su Jiwen looked at Zhang He, who was covered in blood, and said, "You should know who I am, right?" Zhang He paused, pondered for a moment, and said, "Should I address you as noble, or as county lord?" At this point, if Zhang He still couldn't guess that the man in black was the noble person who contacted him in the county, then he would be a huge idiot. As early as several days ago, Zhang He knew the identity of the nobleman who contacted him. He was the county magistrate of Taiping County. It was precisely because of Su Jiwen's identity as the county magistrate that He was willing to take the risk to do such a big thing. But Zhang He couldn't help but feel a little worried at this time. The thing was done, so would the county magistrate not go back on his word? "Whatever you want to call me," Su Jiwen said, "there's one thing I need you to do. Take your men and drive out the refugees who are causing chaos in the city. After you're done, you can come directly to Fuhu Boxing Gym to find me." After saying that, Su Jiwen and Li Hu quickly left. Zhang Yi breathed a sigh of relief. At that moment, he was still quite afraid that Su Jiwen would go back on his word and kill him to silence him. After all, Su Jiwen and others were 2 7th-grade warriors. It might be difficult for them to kill his team of more than 100 people, but killing him alone should not be difficult. Fortunately, County Magistrate Su Jiwen was a trustworthy man after all and had no intention of burning bridges after crossing them. "Brothers!" Zhang He turned and looked at the brothers behind him. "Let's go. Let's finish this last thing together, and then welcome our new identities and lives." When Zhang He led his men to stop the refugees from entering the city, Yuan Jiang, the chief constable of Taiping County, also walked into the gate of the Zhu family with several constables. It is not difficult to tell from a name, Yuan Jiang, that he belongs to the Yuan family of Taiping County. Even such an important position as the head of the police is occupied by people from the Yuan family. This shows how powerful the infiltration of the three major families of Taiping County into the government is. As soon as he entered the Zhu family, Yuan Jiang saw a corpse lying in a pool of blood. It's Mr. Liu. A constable behind Yuan Jiang recognized the identity of the corpse as Liu Changtian, one of the wealthy men in Taiping County. Go in and take a look. Yuan Jiang didn't care about Mr. Liu's identity. Instead, he frowned and led the team to the living room. As soon as he entered the living room, the bloody smell that hit him made Yuan Jiang frown. Vomit! The constables behind Yuan Jiang began to retch and almost vomited all the food they had eaten that night. The entire living room was littered with corpses. All they could see was blood and corpses. The corpses seemed to have died with their eyes open, as if telling them of their endless resentment. Zhu Ming, Zhu Fuxiang, Yuan Qing, Fang Yong. Yuan Jiang's face turned ashen as he identified the corpses on the ground one by one, his expression becoming more and more ugly. No one from the Zhu family survived. Not even the people from the Fang family and the Yuan family survived. How's the situation? At this time, a voice came from behind Yuan Jiang and others. Yuan Zhu, the head of the Yuan family, walked in with several warriors from the clan and asked. After Yuan Zhu, Fang Tang, the head of the Fang family, also arrived. Looking at the corpses all over the ground, his face was as gloomy as water. No one is alive, Yuan Jiang said in a deep voice. Whether it was the Zhu family or the guests who came, not a single one was left alive. How dare you? Yuan Zhu gritted his teeth and walked to the side of Yuan Qing's body, shouting angrily, "They even dared to kill people from my Yuan family. These thieves are so audacious." Yuan Zhu's anger was justified, because the deceased Yuan Qing was none other than one of his sons. As the patriarch of a large family, he certainly had many sons, but no matter how many sons he had, he would still feel sad if one of them was killed. What made Yuan Zhu even more angry than his son's death was that someone from Taiping County actually dared to challenge the dignity of the Yuan family. Yongye, Fang Tang, was also standing beside Fang Yong's body. The anger in his eyes almost turned into substance. Fang Yong was also one of his sons. His son was killed, so of course he had reason to be angry. Of course, in addition to anger, Fang Tang was more shocked. The three major families in Taiping County have been rooted in Taiping County for hundreds of years. No one has dared to challenge the dignity of the three major families for many years. But now, not only did someone challenge them, but they also slaughtered everyone in the Fang family. This made Fang Tang feel cold in his heart. If the thief had chosen the Fang family instead of the Zhu family today, would the Fang family also face the fate of being slaughtered? None of the women in the backyard survived either. At this time, Yuan Jiang went into the backyard to check and came back saying the thieves who broke into the Zhu family were obviously here with the intention of destroying the entire family. The women in the backyard, including the maids, were all killed. Check. Yuan Zhu's face turned grim as he said, "We must find out who did this. I will make him pay with blood." Yes. Yuan Jiang clasped his fists solemnly. The fact that the Zhu family was slaughtered must be investigated thoroughly. If it is not investigated thoroughly, I am afraid that both the Yuan family and the Fang family will have trouble sleeping and eating. It's a very simple logic. Since this group of daring thieves dared to massacre the Zhu family, they might not dare to massacre the Yuan family and the Fang family. Chapter 104 Public Meal. In Taiping County, the chaos caused by the refugees continued, but soon the government detectives reacted and arrested the rioting refugees one by one and put them in custody. However, the number of refugees was too large, and the small number of constables in the county town was obviously unable to quell the chaos. Fortunately, at this time, Zhang He appeared with his men. Zhang He was very smart. He and his men specifically looked for places that the constables could not reach and drove the rioting refugees out of the county. Of course, necessary massacres are inevitable in this process. These refugees may have been just honest farmers, but when the beast in their hearts was released, they were no longer honest farmers, but brutal criminals like wild beasts. It was useless to reason with such people, so Zhang He had no choice but to talk to them with a knife and forcibly drive them out of the city. The chaos continued until almost dawn. After driving all the refugees out of the city and closing the city gates, Zhang He brought the remaining brothers to the door of the Fuhu boxing gym. After letting his men split up and wait for him outside the door, Zhang He, with only Shouho, walked through the door of the boxing gym and met Su Jiwen and Li Hu who were drinking tea in the backyard. Su Jiwen had already taken off his nightgown. Seeing Zhang He come in, he pointed to the seat opposite him and said, "Come in, sit down." Zhang He did not refuse and went straight to sit down opposite Su Jiwen, waiting for Su Jiwen to speak. "Have you dealt with all the refugees causing trouble in the city?" "It's done." "Very good." Su Jiwen nodded in satisfaction, took a sip of tea, and said, "After today, I will give you new identities. You and your closest subordinates can come to the county government office to serve as constables and detectives. As for the rest of you, you will fill the positions of soldiers guarding the city. What do you think?" Hearing this, Zhang He's eyes lit up and he quickly said gratefully, "Thank you, County Magistrate." The positions of Chief Constable and Constable are equivalent to the positions of Police Station Chief and Police Officer in China. Needless to say, such positions are very attractive to refugees like Zhang He. Although the position of the soldiers guarding the city is a despised private, they are still paid by the government. I believe that their subordinates will not refuse the opportunity to transform themselves from refugees into soldiers with a regular job and a stable job. As for the warrior herbs I promised you, I will not break my promise. Su Jiwen added, "After today, I will grant you 10 medicinal herbs and a set of techniques. As for whether you can become a warrior, it all depends on your own luck." "Thank you, County Master." Zhang He kept thanking him. To be honest, he had already prepared himself mentally for the possibility that Su Jiwen would not fulfill all his promises, but he did not expect that Su Jiwen would actually keep his promise and not deduct a cent. Su Jiwen stroked his beard gently, accepting Zhang He's thanks. He then added, "Instruct your men. When they become constables and city guards, they must never kill people as arbitrarily as they did today." "I know." "Okay, then you can leave first and come find me tomorrow." Soon, Zhang He walked out of the Fuhu boxing gym with Skinny Monkey and a happy face. After the two men left, Li Hu, who had been silent the entire time, finally spoke up. "I wonder how the county magistrate plans to take over the Zhu family's assets? The Yuan and Fong families won't sit idly by. I have my own way." Su Jiwen stroked his beard gently. At this time, his advisor He Jian also came over and said with a happy face, "County Master, the Zhu family's grain has been fully counted and is sufficient to pay the increased taxes imposed by the court this time." "So little," Su Jiwen said subconsciously. In his opinion, the Zhu family should have a surplus of grain after paying the court's increased taxes, but the result given by He Jian was very different from his expectations. Seeing Su Jiwen seemed somewhat dissatisfied, He Jian hurriedly said, "County Master, the people who counted the grain this time are absolutely reliable. There is absolutely no possibility of corruption. The Zhu family really only has this much grain. Why is it so little?" Su Jiwen muttered to himself. Li Hu looked at Su Jiwen deeply, realizing that he still knew too little about the county magistrate. Within hours of the Zhu family being exterminated, the county magistrate's men had already collected all their food and had already counted it. The county magistrate might not be as capable as he imagined. There was no one available in Taiping County. "Are you sure you have found all of the Zhu family's food?" Su Jiwen asked, staring into He Jian's eyes. "Sure," He Jian said without a trace of guilt. "All of the Zhu family's stored grain and medicinal materials have been moved into the warehouse, prepared in advance. Nothing has been left out." "That's a bit strange." Su Jiwen Wen, the Zhu family shouldn't have so little food. According to his judgment, the Zhu family, which controlled 1/10 of the land in Taiping County, should have far more food reserves than the number given by He Jian. "Your Highness doesn't know." At this time, He Jian explained, "The entire Qingzhou is currently short of food, and the people are in great need of it. As a result, the Zhu family has taken out more grain to sell and make money, resulting in the Zhu family's grain reserves being much less than before." "I see," Su Jiwen suddenly realized, and then felt a little worried. He originally wanted to rely on eliminating the Zhu family, using the Zhu family's grain to pay the increased taxes, and at the same time resettling the refugees outside the city. But now it seems that it is not possible. The Zhu family's grain can only cope with the tax increase. As for the food for settling the refugees, I'm afraid they have to think of another way. County Master. At this time, Li Hu said, "Don't forget Li's share." Hearing this, Su Jiwen smiled and said, "Master Li, don't worry. I will never forget your part." All Su Jiwen wanted was the Zhu family's food and land. As for the medicinal herbs, they were useless to him, so he naturally didn't mind using them to win over Li Hu. To be honest, if it weren't for Li Hu's help tonight, it would probably not be so easy to deal with the Zhu family. After all, it was quite difficult for Su Jiwen, who was only a 7th-rank warrior, to deal with so many warriors from the Zhu family, even though most of those warriors were of the 9th and 8th ranks. That's good. Liu said no more and just drank his tea. Su Jiwen and He Jian went to the county government office to deal with the aftermath of last night. Around noon, after resting for one night in Qinjia village, Wu Han led Zhang Ming and other young men to the outside of Taiping County. Why did there seem to be fewer refugees? Looking at the small number of refugees outside the city, Wu Han couldn't help but feel a little surprised. The number of refugees outside the city at this time was at least half of what it was when he left the city yesterday. Chapter 105 Rhubarb and Erhuang. Did they let refugees into the city? Zhang Ming also had a look of suspicion on his face. The number of refugees outside the North City Gate today was much less than when they left yesterday. I don't know. Wu Han shook his head and came to the city gate with this doubt, but saw that there were still 2 soldiers guarding the city gate. These 2 soldiers were naturally temporarily arranged by Su Jiwen. In addition to the 2 soldiers, Wu Han also noticed some blood-red color at the city gate that had not yet been cleaned. This made Wu Han's heart tremble, and he knew that something big must have happened in the city. Wu Han subconsciously took out a copper coin from his pocket and handed it to the 2 soldiers guarding the city, but was rejected by the soldiers. From now on, merchants will no longer need to pay an entrance fee to enter the city. A soldier waved his hand and refused, saying that these few people who were temporarily arranged to guard the city gate were all confidants of the county magistrate, Su Jiwen. Naturally, they had to act according to Su Jiwen's requirements. They would not do anything like collecting entrance fees. However, the soldiers' refusal made Wu Han even more suspicious. What on earth had happened in the city that these soldiers guarding the city no longer cared about money? With this doubt, Wu Han entered the city and first went to the Fuhu boxing gym to sell the white-feathered chicken. Then he and the 3 brothers Zhang Ming hurried back home. "Old Wu, you're back." As soon as Wu Han returned home, he saw Zhang Ye, who looked terrified. Seeing Wu Han back, Zhang Ye seemed to have found her backbone and couldn't help complaining. "We didn't come home yesterday, and I was almost scared to death at home alone." Zhang Ye still feels scared about what happened yesterday. The shouting and screaming in the middle of the night kept Zhang Ye awake the whole night, for fear that someone would break into her house. Fortunately, I don't know whether it was because Zhang Ye was lucky or Wu Han's house was located in a remote area, but no refugees noticed this place, and no one tried to break in. Wu Han grabbed Zhang Ye's hand, comforting her while asking, "What happened?" "I don't know what happened," Zhang Ye said. "I just heard from my neighbors this morning that refugees broke into the city last night. As soon as they entered the city, they started killing and looting. The cries of killing rang out all night long. I don't know how many people were affected. Refugees have entered the city." Wu Han was shocked. He had made such a guess when he was at the city gate. Now, this guess was confirmed by Zhang Ye. The bloodstains at the city gate and the occasional bloodstains on the roads in the city were indeed caused by refugees entering the city. Those refugees are all extremely hungry people. Once they enter the city, they will definitely not live as peacefully as ordinary people. "Wife, are you okay?" "I'm fine, just a little scared." "I'm glad you're okay." Wu Han couldn't help but feel lucky that the refugees didn't rush into his house. Otherwise, the loss of property would be a small matter. His wife Zhang Ye would probably not escape the fate of being defiled or even dead. Looking at the dark circles under Zhang Ye's eyes, Wu Han said distressedly, "Wife, you must have not slept all night, right? Go back and rest first. We can cook for ourselves." "Good." Xinjia village. Just when Wu Han returned to the county town, Chun Dao was standing in the backyard, checking the progress of the ducks and dogs. Ruddy shell duck characteristics: early maturity, large size, and high meat production. Ruddy shell duck advanced Route 1. Mate with red-billed duck to hatch a flat-billed duck. Features of the flat-billed duck: the bill is flat and long, and it has a certain fighting power, which is equivalent to that of an adult. Ruddy shell duck advancement Route 2. Feed duck tongue grass for 3 consecutive days to advance to white-feathered duck. Characteristics of white-feathered ducks: large size, high meat production, and rapid reproduction. All 30 gray-crested pochards in the yard have evolved into red-crested pochards. Not only have their bodies become larger, but their feathers have also turned red, which is much more beautiful than their previous gray color. The advancement route of the red-crested pochard is similar to the previous white-feathered chicken, with 2 routes: combat route and meat duck route. Chen Dao certainly would not consider the battle route, because he could not find any duck breeds on the battle route to mate with the red-crested pochard, so the only thing he could consider was the white-feathered duck. If we can advance to white-feathered ducks, breeding ducks won't be a problem in the future. Chen Dao muttered to himself thoughtfully. White-feathered ducks have the characteristic of fast reproduction, and they must be a similar breed to yellow-feathered chickens. As long as white-feathered chickens can be cultivated, the ducks at home will definitely be able to reproduce in large numbers in the future. But I've never heard of this duck tongue grass. I can ask about it next time I go to the city. After looking at the ducks, Chen Dao turned his attention to the 2 dogs. Garden guard dog, characteristics: loyal, strong sense of territory, powerful fighting ability, comparable to a 9th grade warrior. Guardian dog, advanced route 1. Mating with a pine grooming hound will produce a lion hound. Lion hound characteristics: sharp sense of smell, good at tracking prey, capable of fighting wild beasts, with combat power comparable to an 8th grade warrior. Guardian dog advancement route 2. Feed blood pine wood for 5 consecutive days to advance to a mountain guard dog. Guardian dog characteristics: loyal, strong sense of territory, and combat power comparable to an 8th grade warrior. Is the perfect choice for guarding the house. The 2 Xi'an native dogs have changed a lot now. When Chen Dao first bought them, the 2 dogs were somewhat thin. But before coming to Chen Dao's home, they not only ate well, but also successfully advanced, and their appearance changed dramatically. Although the hair of the 2 successfully upgraded guard dogs was still orange-yellow, their bodies had grown a whole circle larger. It was not obvious when they were on all 4s, but when the 2 dogs stood up, it was discovered that they were almost as tall as Chen Dao. You know, Chen Dao, who had been well-nourished during this period, had grown to a height of 1.6 meters. When he stood up, he was 1.6 meters tall. In the China of his previous life, he could be called a large dog. Let's just call you to Huang and Air Huang. Chen Dao casually named the 2 guard dogs. As the 2 dogs successfully advanced, their spirituality seemed to have improved a lot. When they heard the names given to them by their owner, the 2 dogs immediately wagged their tails happily and surrounded Chen Dao and barked excitedly. Da Huang even stood up, put his front legs on Chen Dao's chest, and stuck out his tongue wildly to express his love for his master. Okay, you guys continue to guard the backyard. After stroking the dog's head for a while, Chen Dao said something to Chen Lian and others who were cleaning up the chicken and duck manure, and then returned to the house. After Chen Dao left, Wu Yun, who was sweeping up the chicken and duck droppings with a broom, finally spoke up. How did Brother Dao do it? How these ducks changed so much? Chapter 106, Xiao Village. Wu Yun and others have been working here for Chen Dao for a few days. On their first day, the ducks in the yard were the most common gray-shelled ducks, but when they came here again today, the ducks had changed. Not only did its body become larger, but its originally gray feathers also turned red, which made Wu Yun and others feel amazed. Let's not ask too much about Brother Dao's affairs. Chen Lian said, just work hard and have enough to eat. Of course, Chen Lian knew that Chen Dao was hiding a secret from them, but she had no intention of finding out. She was already very satisfied to be able to work and eat for Chen Dao, and there was no need to dig into the matter and make Chen Dao unhappy. Wu Yun and the others probably had the same idea. They asked simply because they were curious. After hearing what Chen Lian said, they quickly put away their curiosity and continued to work. The front yard of Chen Dao's house. Chen Cheng was holding up stone locks to test his arm strength. These stone locks were specially made by Chen Dao at the request of an old stonemason in the village, and they cost Chen Dao a lot of copper coins. At this time, Chen Cheng was holding a stone lock with the words 200 Jin engraved on it, and his underwear was propped up high by his bulging muscles. Call! After a moment, Chen Cheng put down the stone lock and said to Chen Dao, who was walking over, Brother Dao, I now have 200 kilograms of strength. Good. Very good. He gave Chen Cheng a thumbs up and a big praise. Chen Cheng's progress was visible to the naked eye. Before he started practicing martial arts, he had an arm strength of over 100 kilograms. Now, after just a few days, he has possessed a huge strength of 200 kilograms, which is stronger than the arm strength of an ordinary ninth-grade warrior. Of course, Chun Sheng was not yet a warrior at this time, because his skin had not completely changed and had not yet become as tough as cowhide. Chun Dao estimated that when Chun Sheng completely entered the realm of ninth-grade warrior, he would have at least 300 to 400 kilograms of strength, far surpassing the ordinary ninth-grade warrior. As for Chun Dao himself, during this period, Chun Dao gave most of the blood-feather chicken and chicken blood to Chun Sheng, and he enjoyed the chicken himself. With the subtle nourishment of the chicken, Chun Dao's strength has now increased to more than 400 pounds. In a short time, he will probably become an 8th-grade warrior. Brother Cheng, accompany me to the fields to take a look. Chun Dao hung Xiaoyuan, who was running towards him, on his shoulders, and took Chun Sheng with him, and walked slowly towards the fields of Shaochen village in the south. In the endless fields, the villagers of Qinjia village are working hard. The strong adult men are responsible for plowing the land, while the women and children with less strength are also doing what they can. Village Chief Chun He stood by the field, looking at the villagers busy in the fields, with a gratified smile on his face. Many years ago, when he took over the position of village chief, Qinjia village was also so busy, lively, and full of hope. But with the arrival of the cold disaster, Qinjia village has not been so lively for a long time. Fortunately, Qinjia village produced a man named Chun Dao. With his help, the entire Qinjia village seemed to have regained its vitality, and everyone had a satisfied smile on their face. Village head. But at this moment, a voice came from behind Chun He. Turning around, Chun He's smile suddenly became wider. Brother Dao is here? Chun Dao nodded and asked, Village chief, how long will it take to plow the land? Almost there. Chun He thought for a moment and said, I estimate that we can finish plowing the land today and start sowing tomorrow. At this point, Chun He couldn't help but frown. Brother Dao, are you sure you can really grow crops in this weather? Don't worry, village chief. I know what's going on. Chun Dao said this, and then looked at the villagers busy in the fields. In the past life, the pastoral life was the life that many people in big cities who were busy with work yearned for. But in fact, the pastoral life was not as beautiful as imagined, because farming was not easier than working, and it was even more tiring than working. But in Chun Dao's sight at this moment, the villagers who were busy in the fields all had smiles on their faces. Their bodies might be a little tired, but their faces were full of longing. Perhaps it was because they saw the hope of having enough food to eat while working in the fields. While the villagers were busy, Li Chong, the village chief of Xiao village, was standing on the edge of the fields in his village to the south of Qinjia village, looking at the busy villagers of Qinjia village in the distance, his face full of confusion. Father, Li Chong's eldest son, Li Mu, was also confused and asked, What are the villagers of Qinjia village doing? Are they trying to grow food in this land? Xiao village is actually not far from Qinjia village. In fact, the fields of the two villages are connected. Standing by the fields of Xiao village, you can see the busy villagers of Qinjia village from afar. In fact, 3 days ago, Li Chong noticed the very abnormal behavior of the villagers in Qinjia village. During these 3 days, Li Chong ran here almost every day and watched the busy villagers in Qinjia village from afar. How should I know? Li Chong shook his head and said, Are the villagers of Qinjia village stupid? In this weather, no matter how well they cultivate the land, no crops will grow. Li Chong knew Chun He, the village chief of Qinjia village. He always thought that Chun He was a smart man and should not do such a stupid thing. So what are they doing? Have no idea. Li Chong continued to shake his head. He also didn't understand the Qinjia village villagers' behavior. Even if they wanted to plow the land, they should have waited until the spring when the weather warmed up, right? Now, it was freezing cold and the land couldn't grow crops. What good would it do even if they plowed it? Could it be that? Li Chong couldn't help but think of the two government officials who came to Xiao village a while ago. Everyone in Qinjia village had to hand over silver as additional taxes, and Xiao village, which was not far from Qinjia village, was naturally no exception. Li Chong couldn't help but wonder if Chun He really couldn't pay the taxes. So he came up with this stupid idea, thinking of paying taxes by relying on the grain grown in the fields. But this is unrealistic. Not to mention whether the land can grow crops. Even if it can, by the time the crops are grown, it will be past the tax payment deadline. Standing by the field, Li Chong looked at the busy villagers of Qinjia village in the distance in confusion. It was not until the sun set that Li Chong returned home with his son Li Mu. The villagers of Qinjiao village who were busy in the fields also carried their farm tools to the edge of the fields and walked towards the village in groups of 2 or 3. The work is done, and I can eat steamed buns again. The land has been tilled today. Can we start sowing tomorrow? Of course. I wonder if Brother Dao can really grow crops. I hope the rice can grow, so I can continue to eat steamed buns. Me too. Chapter 107. Did we dig up some nugget of gold? No words were spoken that night. The next day, when Chun Dao woke up, the house was already busy. In the kitchen, Li Ping, Ding Xiaohua, and He Zuoyan, who came to help, were preparing food for the villagers who were working. In the backyard, Chan Lian and others, who were welcomed into the house by Li Ping, were feeding the chickens, ducks, and dogs. In the front yard, Chun Shang was bored and practicing the tiger subduing fist, sweating profusely in the cold weather. Chun Dao greeted Chun Shang and opened the front door, only to see that many villagers had already gathered outside. When they saw Chun Dao opening the door, they all came forward to greet him enthusiastically. Brother Dao, good morning. Good morning, Brother Dao. Has Brother Dao had breakfast? Facing the enthusiastic crowd, Chun Dao nodded and responded, Please wait a moment. Breakfast will be ready soon. Brother Dao, we are not in a hurry. Anyway, Brother Dao, you won't leave us without a single bite to eat, so don't worry. Yes, Brother Dao, we're not in a hurry. The villagers all said there was no need to rush, but Chun He stepped out from the crowd and asked Chun Dao, Brother Dao, today is the day for planting. Are you ready for planting? Certainly. Chun Dao nodded without hesitation. He had checked the progress of the winter wheat last night and confirmed that it had successfully advanced to cold-resistant wheat. That's good. Chun He immediately felt relieved. At this time, Li Ping and Ding Xiaohua also walked out the door with 2 large rice buckets and began to distribute breakfast to the villagers. The villagers lined up in an orderly manner, and after receiving the steamed buns, they gathered with their families or acquaintances to enjoy the delicious steamed buns. This steamed bun is really good. I've been eating it for so long, and I still don't feel sick of it. Chungo said this after swallowing a steamed bun in one gulp. You do not say. A villager who was familiar with Chungo's father, Chun Sheng, chimed in, No wonder steamed buns in the city only cost a few coins each. This food is truly something you never tire of. Only Brother Dao can give us such precious food. A young man sighed. Ever since I ate the steamed buns from Brother Dao's house, I can't eat rice bran anymore. Yes. Rice bran is just dog food. It's not as delicious as steamed buns. Speaking of which, if we eat like this every day, will Brother Dower's family run out of food? That shouldn't be the case. Brother Dower's family has no shortage of food. Brother Dao has definitely figured all out. There's no need for you to worry. After enjoying the delicious steamed buns, the villagers carried their farm tools and headed straight for the farmland in Qinjiao village. At the same time, Chun Dao also asked Chun Sheng to pick up the bag of cold-resistant wheat seeds and go to the edge of the farmland with the villagers. Looking at the hundreds of villagers standing by the farmland with eager faces, Chun Dao said, The wheat seeds are here. Take them and plant them. Upon hearing this, Chun He, the village chief, stepped forward, opened the bag of grain seeds, took a look, and praised, This grain seed is not bad. Chun He is the village chief of Qinjiao village and also an old farmer. As an old farmer, he could tell at a glance that the grain seeds in the bag were of good quality. These grain seeds were uniform in size, plump, bright in color, and shiny, and they were obviously good grain seeds. Chun He handed the grain bag to his second brother Chin Chong. Chong, distribute the seeds to the villagers and let everyone sow them. Good. Chin Chong nodded, took the bag of seeds, and distributed the seeds to the villagers. Then the villagers started to get busy, scattered among the fields, and began to sow. Chun Dao was also interested and wanted to experience the feeling of farming, so he grabbed a handful of seeds, ran to the field, and started working. Just when Chun Dao was working in the fields, Chun He suddenly noticed 2 outsiders walking towards him through the fields of Qinjiao village. Li Qiang and his son Li Mu. Chun He had sharp eyesight and recognized the 2 people at the first moment. He wondered why they came over, but he still went forward and said to Li Chong, Bald Chong, why are you coming to our village? Because Li Chong suffered from an illness since childhood, his hair has never grown out, so people who know him call him Bald Chong. Come and see what's going on in your Qinjiao village. Li Chong didn't seem to mind being called Bald Chong. He just asked, Hey, village chief Chun, are you farming in your village? What else? Chun He asked in return, It's so cold. We are not farming. Are we here to play in the fields? You know it's very cold? Li Chang was even more confused. It was such a cold day, and it was obvious that no crops could be grown in the fields. But all the villagers from Chunjia village came here to farm. Isn't this nonsense? I think you are doing useless work. Li Chang shook his big bald head and said, if we can grow crops in this weather, I'll take your surname, Chunhe. Oh, Chunhe just said, oh, without any explanation. Instead, he changed the subject and asked, does your Xiao village also want to increase taxes? Before Li Chang could say anything, Li Mu beside him spoke first. Damn it, this government is totally killing us. We can't afford the 2 taels of silver tax increase. Li Mu's face was full of anger. When the 2 messengers entered the village a while ago, Li Mu wanted to beat them to death in the village. What's the difference between increasing taxes by 2 taels of silver or 1 stone of grain and forcing them to death? Well, Li Chang was also worried. During this period, he was so worried about the tax increase that his hair was about to grow out, but there was nothing he could do. Now, every household in Xiao village could not even get enough bran to eat. So how could they come up with 100 kilograms of grain to pay the tax? The consequences of not paying taxes. Li Chang was frightened just thinking about it. Being sent to the north as a soldier was almost assured death. Village Chief Chun. Li Chang looked at Chunhe and asked, how does your village plan to deal with the tax increase? We have our own way. Chunhe stroked his beard gently and said with a smug smile, anyway, we will definitely not be sent to the north as exiles. Seeing Chunhe's confident smile, Li Chang and Li Mu looked at each other in surprise. Because Xiao village is close to Qinjia village, and they often intermarry, the 2 villages have close exchanges and both sides are more familiar with each other's situations. Li Chang and Li Mu both knew very well that life was not easy in Xiao village, and Qinjia village was not much better off either. At this time, Chunhe said confidently that Qinjia village could cope with the tax increase, which made the 2 of them feel very surprised. The people of Qinjia village are so poor that they are almost eating tree bark. Where can they get the food or money to pay for this tax increase? Could it be that? Did the people in Qinjia village dig up gold nuggets in the mountains? Chapter 108 The Color of Pride. Village Chief Chun, how does your village pay taxes? Li Chang asked anxiously. Chunhe, however, smiled complacently without saying a word. He really liked seeing Li Chang's anxious expression. Seeing Chun, he remained silent. Li Chang became even more anxious. Village Chief Chun, please stop keeping us in suspense and tell us everything. Yes, Village Chief Chun, please tell us about it. Li Mu on the side also asked with anticipation. They really wanted to know how Chunjia village could survive this tax increase. It's hard for me to say. Chunhe didn't keep the secret for too long and simply said, if you want to know, you can ask Li Ping. The fact that Chun Dao helped the entire village pay taxes was a well-known secret in Qinjia village. As long as Li Chang and the others were willing to inquire, they could eventually find out. However, Li Chang could not tell this matter to others, otherwise Chun Dao would inevitably feel resentful. Li Ping. Li Chang and Li Mu looked at each other, recalled in their minds, and finally remembered who Li Ping was. In fact, Li Ping married to Qinjia village from Xiao village. Li Ping used to go back to Xiao village often to visit her relatives, but after her parents passed away one after another in the past few years, she went to Xiao village much less frequently. Speaking of which, Li Chang, Li Mu, and Li Ping are distant relatives. After all, they are from the same village and have the same surname Li, so it is inevitable that they are related by blood. When Li Ping was in the village, she had to call Li Chang uncle. Li Ping can pay taxes for your village? Village Chief Chun, are you kidding me? Li Chang said with a look of doubt on his face. Li Ping is just an ordinary rural woman. How could she have the ability to help Qinjia village solve the tax increase issue? Believe it or not, Chunhe was too lazy to explain and walked into the fields to check on the villagers' work. Li Chang and Li Mu looked at each other, thought for a while, and then walked directly towards Qinjia village, intending to find Li Ping. Naturally, the 2 didn't know where Li Ping lived. Fortunately, there were many young children playing on the roadside in the village. After asking these children, the 2 successfully arrived at Qindao's house. The door of Qindao's house was open. Since the family had enough self-defense power, Qindao's door no longer needed to be closed as before. When Li Chang and Li Mu walked into the gate, they saw 2 children playing and Li Ping, who was looking at them with a smile not far away from the children. Li Ping turned around when she saw someone coming in and asked in surprise, village chief Li. Why are you here? Li Ping, who was born in Xiao village, was quite familiar with Li Chong. When she was young, Li Chong was already the son of the village chief. After she grew up, Li Chong became the village chief and a top figure in Xiao village. Li Ping naturally remembered what he looked like. Xiao Ping. Li Chong nodded with a smile on his face, and Li Mu also said with a smile, Sister Ping, village chief, and Xiao Mu, please take a seat. Because there were no men in the house, Li Ping was not in a position to invite the two men into the house to sit down. So she had to move out 2 stools for Li Chong and Li Mu to sit down. Then Li Ping called to the kitchen again, Xiaohua, bring out some food. Come on. Soon, Ding Xiaohua came out with a rice bucket, placed it in front of Li Chong and the others, and ran back to the kitchen to busy herself. Li Ping called out to Li Chong and the others, Village Chief Li, have something to eat first. Li Chong and Li Mu stared at the steamed buns in the rice bucket without blinking, and the shock on their faces was particularly obvious. In this year, even Li Chong, the village chief, had a hard time. Although they didn't have to eat bran every meal, they could only eat sorghum noodles occasionally. And Li Ping's family. Yet, he easily took out so many white flour buns to entertain the guests. This couldn't help but make Li Chong and the others feel extremely incredible. They knew something about Li Ping's family situation. After all, Li Ping would occasionally return to Xiao village in the past few years and told them some about her family situation. Therefore, they knew that Li Ping's husband had passed away long ago and she became a widow. These days, the importance of a young adult workforce to a family is self-evident. Li Chong and his wife had thought that Li Ping, having lost her husband, would have a very difficult life, but the big bucket of steamed buns in front of them undoubtedly overturned their guess. Li Mu reached out and grabbed a steamed bun, bit half of it into his mouth, feeling the fragrance and sweet taste of the bun in his mouth. He couldn't help but narrow his eyes slightly, and a look of enjoyment appeared on his face. Li Chong couldn't help it either, so he grabbed a steamed bun and stuffed it into his mouth, then showed a similar expression to Li Mu. The taste of the white flour steamed buns was much better than the grains they usually ate. After eating 1 steamed bun each, the two of them couldn't help but grab another one and put it in their mouths. After eating 3 or 4 in a row, the two finally stopped. Li Mu couldn't help but sigh. Sister Ping, you're living such a good life, aren't you? You can even use white flour buns to entertain guests. Even in peaceful years, there were very few people in Chunjia village and Xiao village who could offer steamed buns to entertain guests. Not bad. Li Ping smiled and said, my family's life has been better recently than before. After that, Li Ping asked again, by the way, village chief Li, how are my brothers and the others doing recently? Li Ping's 2 brothers were very good to her. When her husband just passed away, the 2 brothers helped her a lot. However, Li Ping was embarrassed to drag her 2 brothers down too much, so she had less contact with her brothers in the past 2 years. Not good. Li Chong shook his head and said, it's not just your brothers. The entire Xiao village is having a hard time right now. No one is getting enough to eat. Li Ping's heart skipped a beat when she heard the word bad. She was just thinking about how to help her 2 brothers when Li Chong continued. Xiao Ping, I heard that your Qinjiao village has a way to deal with this tax increase? Li Ping was stunned for a moment after her train of thought was suddenly interrupted, and then she said, there is a way. Li Chong and Li Mu's eyes lit up as they pressed on. What's the solution? Li Ping thought about it. Chen Dao didn't seem to say that telling others about this matter was forbidden, so she replied, you guys know about my son Dao Ge, right? No. Li Chong and Li Mu nodded in unison. When Chen Dao was a child, Li Ping took him to Xiao village, so both Li Chong and Li Mu had seen Chen Dao. Brother Dao is more capable. Li Ping's face lit up with pride when she spoke of her son. He's made a lot of money doing business. This time, Dao Ge helped the villagers pay the tax increase in Qinjia village. The condition was the villagers rented their land to Dao Ge for 6 months and helped him farm the land. Chapter 109, The Envied Head of Xiao village. Did Dao Ge gang pay it forward? Li Chong and Li Mu looked at each other in bewilderment. They had considered all the possibilities for Qinjia village to pay the tax increase, including the low probability event of Qinjia village digging up nugget gold, but they had never imagined it was actually Chen Dao who helped pay it. In their minds, Chen Dao was just a young boy, yet he was able to help the entire village pay so much tax. The 2 men were shocked, and at the same time, they understood why the villagers of Qinjia village were busy working in the fields. It turned out that Chen Dao helped them pay the tax of 2 taels of silver, and then they helped Chen Dao work. Is brother Dao so capable? Li Mu muttered to himself. Li Ping, upon hearing the voice, smiled proudly and said, "That's right. Brother Dao has completely changed since his serious illness. He's become quite capable. The good life of the family now is all brought by Chun Dao." Li Ping can be said to be extremely satisfied with her son. Xiaoping. Li Chong suddenly looked at Li Ping and asked sheepishly, "Look, could Brother Dao help our Xiao village pay the tax as well? We're willing to rent out our land and help with the labor." Li Chong is sure that as long as Chun Dao is willing to help the villagers of Xiao village pay taxes, the villagers of Xiao village will definitely not mind renting the land to him and helping him farm. It's so cold now, and there's no use leaving the land there. It's better to rent it to Chun Dao in exchange for 2 taels of silver to keep going. Li Ping opened her mouth, seemingly not expecting Li Chong to make such a request, so she said perfunctorily, "I don't know what Brother Dao thinks. I'll ask him when he comes back." Well, Li Ping's words probably meant almost the same as a rejection. Li Chong knew in his heart that it would be difficult for such a great thing to happen to Xiao village. The reason why he suddenly asked the question was that he had a slight thought in his mind. After seeing Li Ping's refusal, Li Chong didn't shamelessly force her to do anything. He just said, "Then Xiaoping, we'll go back first. We'll come see you again when we have time," etc. Li Ping suddenly stopped Li Chong and the other man as they stood up and were about to leave. She took out 2 large bags from the house and handed them to them. "Village Chief Chun, please help me deliver these 2 bags of food to my 2 brothers." Li Chong shook the 2 grain bags and roughly judged the weight. There were at least 50 kilograms of grain in one bag, and judging for its appearance, it should be sorghum flour or white flour. At this moment, Li Chong had a deeper understanding of the wealth of Li Ping's family. "Don't worry, Xiaoping. I will definitely deliver these grains to your brother." After making a promise to Li Ping, Li Chong and Li Mu walked out of Chun Dao's house side by side. Li Mu looked back at Chun Dao's house reluctantly and couldn't help but sigh. "Dad, the food at Sister Ping's house is so good. She can easily take out a big bucket of white flour buns to entertain guests." "Yes." Li Chong licked the corner of his mouth, which still had a hint of the aroma of steamed buns. "I never thought Xiaoping's son would be so capable and help the entire Qinjia village pay taxes." The 2 of them chatted with each other and soon passed through the busy farmland of Qinjia village and returned to Xiao village, the home of Li Ping's elder brother Li Daiden. Li Dabing and his wife Feng Xiang were lying on the bed, their stomachs growling with hunger, but they had no intention of cooking. They just stared at the ceiling in a daze. "Bold." Feng Xiang seemed a little bored and made small talk. "When will these days of us not having enough to eat end?" "How would I know?" Li Dabing blinked his dry eyes and said bitterly, "This damn God is deliberately making life difficult for us. The government is the same. We can't even get enough to eat, and they're still raising taxes." The situation at Li Daiden's home was not much better than when Chun Dao had just crossed over. There was very little food left at home, and there was no output from the fields. They had to save food every day and then lie in bed to minimize consumption. "I don't know how Xiaoping is doing." Li Dabing changed the subject and talked about his younger sister, Li Ping. Li Dabing and his second brother, Li Feng, loved this youngest sister very much. After his sister got married, they often went to Qinjia village to check on her. Where her husband was still alive, her life was pretty good. But after he passed away, things took a sharp turn for the worse. In the past, Li Dabing and Li Feng could occasionally help their younger sister, but as the cold disaster swept across Qingzhou, they no longer had the energy to help Li Ping. "Your sister must be having a hard time too," Feng Xiang continued. "The fields aren't producing much right now, and she has 2 children to take care of. Life must be tough." Feng Xiang was not a stingy woman. She knew that Li Dabing had helped Li Ping in the past, but she had no opinion about it. Instead, she felt very sympathetic towards Li Ping. Unfortunately, God didn't seem to want to make life easy for people. The cold disaster lasted for several years, and even families with strong laborers had a very difficult time, not to mention Li Ping, a widow with 2 children. "Well," Li Dabing sighed and said, "I plan to go to Qinjia village in a few days to see Xiaoping. I'm very worried about her." Li Dabing hadn't been to Qinjia village to see Li Ping for several months. The reason was that he really couldn't give Li Ping anything, and he would feel embarrassed to leave empty-handed. "Go ahead." Feng Xiang knew that Li Dabing would definitely take out the limited food in the family to help Li Ping, but but she was too lazy to object. After all, Li Dabing would only take a few kilograms of food at most. Although a few kilograms of food was a lot, it was not enough to make the family go hungry. Knock, knock, knock. Just as the two were talking, there was a knock on the door. Who is it? Li Dabing was too lazy to get out of bed, so he just shouted out the door. Bold, it's me, the village chief Li Chong. The voice of the village chief Li Chong came from outside the door. Li Dabing had no choice but to get out of bed and open the door of his house. As soon as the door opened, the village chief Li Chong's shiny bald head was revealed. In addition to the eye-catching bald head, there was also the village chief's son Li Mu. Village chief, please come in and sit down. It's cold outside. Li Dabing hurriedly welcomed Li Chong into the house and closed the door to prevent the cold wind from entering the house. After sitting down in the living room, village chief Li Chong smiled and said to Li Dabing, Dandan, I have brought you something good this time. Nice one. Li Dabing was full of doubt and said, Don't make fun of me, village chief. How could I, Li Dabing, get the good stuff? Li Dabing and Li Chong have the same surname, Li, and may have some blood relationship, but this blood relationship has been separated by many generations. The relationship between the two sides is not even as close as that between neighbors. In this case, Li Dabing does not think that the village chief Li Chong will give him any benefits. Chapter 1, 10 Are you really talking about my sister? You are so bold, Li. Li Chong reached out and nodded at Li Dabing, not minding his attitude. Instead, he continued, I really brought you something good this time. Li Chong gestured to Li Mu to hand the bags to Li Dabing, saying, I just weighed the food your sister asked me to bring you this time, and I estimate there are 50 kilograms of flour in each bag. My sister asked you to bring it? Li Dabing opened the bag and was stunned to see that both bags were filled with white flour. Not only Li Dabing, but even Feng Xiang, who had just walked from the bedroom to the living room, stood there in a daze, unable to come back to her senses for a while. These are 2 big bags of flour. Where did Li Ping get so much food? Your sister asked me to bring it here. Li Chong explained with a smile. Xiao Mu and I just went to Qinjiao village. Your sister gave us these 2 bags of flour and asked me to bring them to you and your second brother. Right. Li Mu, who was standing by, echoed, Brother Bold, let me tell you, your sister's family is living a very good life now. They eat white flour-steamed buns every day. They even treated us to them just now. The more Li Chong and Li Mu talked, the more shocked Li Dabing and Feng Xiang looked. They couldn't help but wonder if the two were talking about their sister Li Ping. How could her sister Li Ping, a widow, have the ability to live such a good life? Not only did she entertain the guests with white flour buns, but she also gave away 100 kilograms of white flour. Village head, Li Dabing hesitated for a moment, but still asked, Are you really talking about my sister Li Ping? Who else could it be if not Li Ping? Li Chong laughed and said, Besides Li Ping, who else in Qinjiao village would send you, Li Dabing, so much food? Li Dabing thought about it, and it seemed to be true. Except for Li Ping, no one in the entire Qinjiao village would send food to him, Chen Dabing. Brother Bold, let me tell you, Sister Ping's son Dao Gur is really amazing. Li Mu continued, I heard he made a lot of money in business. Not only can he afford to eat white flour buns at home every day, but he's also helping the villagers of Qinjiao village pay the increased taxes. What? Li Dabing and Feng Xiang felt their heads buzzing. They had to eat white flour buns every day and pay taxes for the entire Qinjiao village. Damn it. Is Li Mu really talking about her sister? Is he talking about some landlord? It took a full quarter of an hour before Li Dabing and Feng Xiang reluctantly accepted the fact that Li Ping had become rich. After accepting it, they were filled with great joy. Just now they were still worried about Li Ping's condition, but unexpectedly, they received good news from Li Ping in the blink of an eye. This made Chun Daden's face show an ecstatic look. He felt relieved to hear that his sister was doing well. Feng Xiang also looked happy. To be fair, she was quite nice to her sister-in-law Li Ping. Now that her sister-in-law had become rich, she would definitely not forget her. The 100 kilograms of flour sent by her sister-in-law was the best proof. You're so bold. You've paid for it this time. Li Chong said enviously, 50 kilograms of flour is enough for your family to eat for several days. Based on the calculation that an adult consumes 2 kilograms of white flour every day, there are 3 people in Li Dabing's family, including the child. 50 kilograms of white flour is enough for them to eat for at least 10 days. Of course, this is not what Li Chong envies the most. What Li Chong envies the most is the relationship between Li Dabing and Li Ping. Now that Li Ping's family is so wealthy, she will definitely not forget Li Dabing, who has always supported her in the past. In other words, Li Dabing will definitely not have to go hungry in the future. Even the tax increase will not be a problem for Li Dabing. After all, Chun Dao has helped the villagers of Qinjia village pay taxes. How can he forget his uncle Li Dabing? Hey, Li Dabing smiled foolishly. He didn't think as much as Li Chong did, but the 100 kilograms of white flour in front of him still made him very happy. With this white flour, his children would not have to cry out for hunger all day long. Looking at Li Dabing's silly smile, Li Chong suddenly felt very uncomfortable. He simply didn't stay at Li Dabing's house and got up to say goodbye and left. After Li Chong left, Feng Xiang couldn't wait to grab a handful of white flour, letting it fall back into the bag from between her fingers like quicksand. How dare you? It seems your sister has really become rich this time. I've only had such good white flour a few times in my life. Feng Xiang's statement was of course an exaggeration. White flour was indeed a rare commodity for ordinary people, but in good years, they could occasionally eat it. It was not so rare that they could only eat it a few times in their entire lives. Hey, Li Dabing still had that silly smile on his face. After knowing that Li Ping was doing well, the smile on his face never stopped. Of course, the white flour in front of him was also one of the reasons why he was in such a good mood. How dare you? What kind of business does your sister run? There are so many people in Qinjia village. How much money would it cost for her to pay taxes for everyone? How would I know? Li Dabing scratched his head. For someone like him, who had never seen a complete ounce of silver, it was a bit difficult for him to calculate how much money was needed to pay taxes for the entire Qinjia village. Fortunately, Li Dabing was an open-minded person and did not delve into the matter. He just said to Feng Xiang, "Wife, you put away one bag of flour first, and I will give the remaining bag to my second brother. Okay, go quickly and come back soon. We'll have white flour tonight." Good. So Li Dabing went out with a bag and went straight to his second brother Li Feng's house. The two houses were not far apart. After walking less than 100 meters, Li Dabing arrived at Li Feng's door and knocked on it. When there was a knock on the door, Li Feng and his wife Luo Xiu were looking at the rice jar at home with frowns on their faces. Behind them is their daughter. Li Feng's daughter Li Jin is already 15 years old, but she looks very thin. She is only about 1.5 meters tall, extremely thin, with dry and yellow hair and deep sunken eye sockets. It can be said that she has nothing to do with the idiom, young girl. It can only be said that she has nothing to do with it at all. The reason for this situation is very simple. In the land of Xia, most ordinary people are not able to eat enough. Even in years of bumper harvest, they can only eat staple food and some wild vegetables at most. As for meat, it is good enough to have one meal a year. After the cold disaster hit, people's lives became increasingly difficult. They could not get enough staple food, could not find wild vegetables, and could not eat meat for several years. This led to most people being malnourished, and Li Feng's daughter was no exception. Long-term malnutrition made it impossible for her to gain weight, let alone grow taller. Chapter 111 Outrageous. Li Feng looked at the almost empty rice jar with a sad expression, and his daughter-in-law Luo Xiu also sighed. Their family has tried their best to save food, but the food reserves at home are almost gone. I told you before, give less support to your sister. Luo Xiu couldn't help but grumble. Isn't this good? We're almost out of food at home. Xiao Ping is my biological sister. How can I ignore her? Li Feng retorted. If I don't even care about my own sister, then what kind of person am I? Yes, you're so kind. Now that we have no food at home, why don't you go find some food? Where can I find food? You're so generous, even though you can't find any food. Looking at her parents bickering with each other, Li Jin had a blank expression on her face. She was probably used to it. Her mother was a person with a sharp tongue, but a soft heart. Every time her father took food to help her aunt, her mother would say a few words. However, she never stopped her father. My father also knew this, so every time they quarreled, he would give in to my mother and let her get the upper hand verbally. Knock, knock, knock. Just as the couple was arguing fiercely, there was a knock on the door in the front yard, and the couple immediately stopped talking. There was nothing wrong with quarreling behind closed doors at home, but it was embarrassing to quarrel in front of outsiders. Second brother, please open the door. I am Li Dadan. A voice that Li Feng was quite familiar with came from outside the door. Here I come. Li Feng hurried out of the house and opened the door. As soon as the door opened, Li Feng saw Li Dabing standing outside with a bag in his hand. He quickly welcomed Li Dabing into the house and asked, Brother, Why are you here? Sister-in-law, Xiaojin. Li Dabing first greeted Luo Xiao and Li Jin with a smile, then said, I'm here to bring you something. Sending something? Li Feng and the other two looked at each other. In the past, when there were peace times, Li Dabing did often send some food and other things to their home. Of course, Li Feng would occasionally send things to Li Dabing's house. But as everyone's life is hard now, the two families haven't given each other gifts for a long time. Look what this is. Li Dabing put the bag on the ground and opened it. Suddenly, white flour came into the eyes of the three people. This is... Luo Xiao's eyes widened as he blurted out, white flour. It's no wonder that Luo Xiao was so shocked. It's because in this year, white flour is too rare for the villagers. She heard from the villagers who went to the city to buy food that a pound of white flour in the city now costs about 20 cents. And the bag of white flour in front of her weighs at least 40 or 50 pounds, which means it is worth nearly 1 or 2 taels of silver. How could Luo Xiao not be shocked? Li Jin didn't say anything, but just looked at the white flour on the ground with shining eyes and couldn't help swallowing his saliva. Her age is the age when people grow up and consume food the fastest. She's not full every day, so her desire for white flour is unparalleled. Big brother. Li Feng was also dumbfounded and asked, where did you get so much white flour? This is dozens of kilograms of white flour, which is something Li Feng couldn't buy even if he took out all the money in his family. Hey. Li Dabing scratched his head and said with a smile, my little sister gave it to us. It's 100 kilograms in total, 50 kilograms each for you and me. A gift from my younger sister? Li Feng was stunned. Just now, he and his wife were talking about his younger sister, but in the blink of an eye, he received news from his younger sister. Luo Xiao was also dumbfounded. She had just been accusing Li Feng of helping Li Ping, but right after she finished accusing him, Li Ping sent her such a good thing. But where did Li Ping get so much white flour? Big brother. Luo Xiao couldn't help but ask, where did Sister Ping get so much white flour? You don't understand this, do you? Li Dabing had a proud smile on his face. I heard from the village chief that my younger sister's family is very rich now. Not only do they eat white flour buns every day, but they also help pay taxes for the villagers of Qinjia village. He ate white flour buns every meal and paid several taxes for the villagers of Qinjia village. Li Feng and Luo Xiao were both stunned. They could accept eating white flour buns every day, but helping the villagers of Qinjia village pay taxes. This is a bit outrageous. You know, this time the tax increase requires each household to pay 2 taels of silver. There are more than 100 households in Qinjia village. Doesn't that mean Li Ping has to pay more than 200 taels of silver? This number is really too shocking. No one in the entire Xiaohe village, even the village chief Li Chong, had probably ever seen so much money. Brother, are you kidding me? Li Feng asked in a dry voice. He really couldn't believe what Li Dabing said. Why would I lie to you? Li Dabing rolled his eyes at Li Feng and said, that's what the village chief told me. Believe it or not, I plan to go to Qinjia village to see Xiaoping tomorrow. Li Dabing had already made plans to set off for Qinjia village to visit Li Ping tomorrow. It was not because he wanted to take advantage of Li Ping's better life, but just to learn more about Li Ping's current situation. I'm going too, Li Feng blurted out, and Luo Xiao and Li Jin also seemed eager to try. They really wanted to know what Li Ping looked like now and why she was so rich. Then we'll go together tomorrow. Li Dabing stuffed the bag of flour into Li Feng's hand and said, second brother, take this food and use it to nourish Jiner. Look how thin she is. Li Dabing looked at Li Jin and shook his head. His niece looked too thin, which was really unbearable to look at. But Li Dabing also knew that Li Feng couldn't be blamed for this. After all, the whole village was having a hard time right now. It was already difficult for Li Feng to raise Li Jin. As for having enough food to eat, that's just wishful thinking. Not long after, Li Dabing left. Li Feng stared blankly at the grain bag for a long time, then looked up at Luo Xiao. Wife, will you still tell me about my support for Xiaoping? No more, no more. Luo Xiao shook her head like a rattle. As the 50 kilograms of flour were delivered, her dissatisfaction with Li Feng disappeared instantly. She also dared not mention Li Feng's previous support for Li Ping. Are you kidding? If Li Feng hadn't helped Li Ping, how could his family have gotten these 50 kilograms of flour? Father. But at this moment, Li Jin, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said, I want to go visit my aunt with you tomorrow. No problem. Li Feng readily agreed and said, Wife, You should go too. Let's go visit my younger sister together tomorrow. Good. Luo Xiao happily agreed, then touched Li Jin's somewhat dry and yellow hair and said, Jiner, mother will go and cook for you. Li Jin swallowed and nodded quickly. Chapter 112 Delicious. The next day, as soon as the sun rose, Li Feng and his family woke up early. Without even having breakfast, the three of them went straight to Li Dabing's house. Second brother, you are here. Just at this time, Li Dabing also walked out of the house with his wife and 10-year-old son. After greeting Li Feng and others, they walked towards the farmland north of Xiao village together. People from Xiao village who go to Changjia village often like to walk from the direction of the farmland because it is closer from here. If they take the official road, they will inevitably have to take a detour, which will make the journey longer. Village chief, why are you here? When Li Dabing reached the edge of the farmland, he suddenly saw the village chief Li Chong and his son Li Mu standing by the field, and he couldn't help but ask. That's bold. Li Chong turned around and said to Li Dabing with a smile, we are watching the people in Changjia village farming. Hearing this, Li Dabing and others couldn't help but look into the distance, but saw that in the farmland belonging to Changjia village, people from Changjia village were working in 2s and 3s, looking very busy. But Li Dabing, Li Feng, Luo Xiao, and others couldn't help but frown. It was so cold that no food could grow in the fields. Aren't the people of Changjia village wasting their efforts? Village chief, have the people of Changjia village gone crazy? How can they grow crops in this weather? Li Feng said subconsciously. I don't know either. Li Chong shook his head and said, but this matter was caused by Ping's son. You can go to Ping's house and find out. Did Brother Dao make this? Li Dabing and others became even more confused. With this confusion, they crossed the farmland and came to the farmland area of Changjia village. Many villagers from Changjia village who were busy working in the fields also saw their arrival, but they didn't care and continued to work. Soon, Li Dabing and his 6 companions arrived at the edge of the farmland and saw Chunhe, who was directing everyone at the edge of the field. You are. Chunhe looked at the 6 people and felt that Li Feng and Li Dabing looked familiar. It took him a long time to remember who they were. It's Bold and Fengzi. Chunhe came forward with a smile and politely asked the two, why are you here? We are here to see my little sister. Li Dabao was the first to speak. Village Chief Chun, why isn't our sister here? Ping girl, you don't have to work? Why are you staying here? Chunhe shook his head and said, if you want to visit Ping, just go to the village and find her. You should remember where her home is, right? No. After seeing that Li Ping was not here, Li Dabing and others were too lazy to say more to Chunhe. After quickly saying goodbye to Chunhe, they went straight to Chen Dao's house. About a quarter of an hour later, Li Dabing and 6 others appeared in front of Chen Dao's house. Looking at the brand new house, they couldn't help but look at each other. Is my little sister's family building a new house? Li Feng couldn't help muttering that the last time he came, Li Ping's family lived in a dilapidated house with leaks everywhere, but now it has become a new house, which made him a little unbelievable. That should be it. Li Dabing glanced at the open door and did not go in directly. Instead, he shouted outside, is Xiaoping home? I came to see you. It must be said that Li Dabing had a very loud voice, and Chun Dao and Chun Chung, who were preparing to start martial art practice in the front yard, were startled. Li Ping, who heard the noise in the house, ran out with a look of surprise, rushed out of the door quickly, and saw Li Dabing and 6 others waiting outside. Big brother, second brother, you are here. Li Ping's face was filled with joy when she saw her 2 brothers. Li Dabing and Li Feng also showed joy on their faces. They had a very good relationship with their younger sister Li Ping, so they were naturally very happy to see Li Ping. Ping Mei, Feng Xiang, and Luo Xiao also came forward to greet Li Ping. Are the 2 sisters-in-law here too? Li Ping's smile grew wider, and she quickly welcomed everyone into the house. At this time, Chen Dao also realized who was coming and stepped forward to greet them, uncle, second uncle, and both aunts. In the original body's memory, the impression of these 2 uncles was quite good. Influenced by the original body's memory, Chen Dao also had a good impression of these 2 uncles. Brother Dao. Li Dabing looked Chen Dao up and down and said with a smile, I haven't seen you for a few months. Brother Dao looks like he's grown up a lot. Yeah, much stronger. Li Feng also nodded. In fact, Chen Dao had become more than just much stronger. From a poor boy to a 9th grade peak warrior, the change was so great that it was almost incomprehensible. It was probably because Li Dabing and the others hadn't seen Chen Dao for a long time, Otherwise, they would have said that he was more than just much stronger. "Uncles, please come inside and sit down. It's cold outside." As the male host of the house, Chun Dao welcomed his two uncles, aunt, and two children into the house. After everyone took their seats, Li Ping spoke first. "Big brother and second brother, you haven't had breakfast yet, right? I'll get it for you." As she spoke, Li Ping walked into the kitchen, came over with a food bucket, and distributed one plump white steam bun after another to Li Dabing and others. "Is this the white flour bun that the village chief mentioned?" Li Dabing looked carefully at the steam bun in his hand. He had only heard of this kind of plump white food, but had never eaten it. After all, even in peaceful years, a steam bun that cost only 1 penny was still too luxurious for a farmer like him. "Tasty." Li Dabing's son, Li Chung, didn't think too much about it. He stuffed the fragrant steamed bun into his mouth, chewing it and making sounds of praise. Li Jin's eating manners were better than Li Cheng's. He tore off a small piece of the steam bun with his hands and ate it slowly, but from Li Jin's expression, it can be seen that she must be quite satisfied with the taste of the steamed buns. "Eat slowly, I'll get you some soup." Li Ping took a look at the two children and felt a little sorry for their thinness. She hurried into the kitchen, brought out a few bowls of egg drop soup, and gave one bowl to each of them. Li Dabing and Li Feng looked at the steamed buns and egg drop soup in their hands, and couldn't help but completely believe what the village chief Li Chong said. When the village chief said that my younger sister's family was living a good life, they were a little skeptical. After all, my younger sister's husband was gone, and a family without a strong laborer must be living a hard life. Now I completely believe it. My sister's family must be quite wealthy to be able to easily take out so many steamed buns and egg drop soup to entertain guests. "Mom, please entertain my uncle and the others. I'm going to go out and get busy first." Chun Dao didn't stay in the living room for long. After saying something to Li Ping, he returned to the front yard to practice boxing with Chun Chung. After Chun Dao left, Li Ping said, "Big brother, second brother, how come you have time to come here today?" Chapter 113, This Chicken Can't Be Killed. "The last thing we lack is time." Li Dabing sighed softly. "We can't even grow any crops in the fields these days. We have nothing to do. We have plenty of time." After that, Li Dabing continued, "I didn't come to see you before just because we were embarrassed." In the past, every time Li Dabing came to Qinjia village to visit Li Ping, he would bring some food, wild vegetables, and other things. However, as his family became difficult, he really had nothing to give to Li Ping, so he had no choice but to not come. "Brother, what you said is true." Li Ping rolled her eyes at Li Dabing and said angrily, "I'm your sister. What's there to be embarrassed about?" Li Dabing scratched his head and didn't say what was in his mind. He just said, "Xiao Ping, I heard that your family helped the villagers of Qinjia village pay all the taxes?" "That's true." Li Ping nodded and said, "This was Dao Guder's idea. I don't know much about it." Li Dabing and Li Feng exchanged a glance. Li Jin, who was eating steamed buns and listening to the adults' conversation, seemed lost in thought. Chun Dao was her cousin by blood, only a few months older than her. Yet Chun Dao was so capable that he could not only feed the whole family, but also help the entire village pay over 200 taels of silver in taxes. Li Jin couldn't help but feel a little admiration in his heart. "Ping Mei," Feng Xiang suddenly interrupted. "Isn't it a bit inappropriate to help the whole village pay taxes? It costs too much." "I don't know what Brother Dao thinks either," Li Ping replied. "Anyway, Dao Ger told me that these 2 taels of silver were not spent for the villagers in vain, and I will definitely earn it back." "Can you earn it back?" Li Dabing and others frowned. They knew nothing about business matters, so it was not convenient for them to express their opinions. Soon, everyone changed the subject and started chatting about some family matters. However, these contents were obviously not of interest to the two children, Li Jin and Li Chung. Soon they left the living room together and came to the front yard. In the front yard, Chun Dao and Chun Cheng were practicing boxing, while on the other side, Chun Fei was playing with Xiao Yuan. As the food at home has improved these days, Chun Fei has become fairer and more tender. When Chun Dao first traveled here, Chun Fei had dry and yellow hair and a thin face. But now, not only are her facial features fuller, but her hair has also gradually become more shiny. If she wasn't still wearing coarse cloth clothes, people would probably believe that she was the daughter of a landlord. Looking at Chun Fei, who was playing, Li Jin couldn't help but walk over and said to Chun Fei with a smile, "You are my cousin Chun Fei, right?" Li Jin had seen Chun Fei before. She had been to Chunjia village with her father Li Feng before. In her impression, Chun Fei was just a little girl who was not well fed and extremely thin. But now, Chun Fei's changes were a little too big, making Li Jin a little hesitant to confirm. Chun Fei, who was playing with Xiao Yuan, looked up, glanced at Li Jin, and asked in confusion, "Who are you?" Li Jin thought for a moment and replied, "I'm your cousin Li Jin." "It's my cousin." Chun Fei had actually met Li Jin before, but she was too young to remember it for a moment. Now, after Li Jin reminded her, she finally remembered, "Cousin, do you want to play with Xiao Yuan?" "May I?" Li Jin took a look at the extremely cute Xiao Yuan and wanted to go up and touch it. Of course. Chun Fei picked up Xiao Yuan with her two small hands without any hesitation and brought it to Li Jin. Li Jin tentatively reached out and touched Xiao Yuan's head. Seeing that Xiao Yuan did not resist, a look of joy appeared on his face. He took Xiao Yuan in his hands, held her in his arms, and kept stroking her. Li Cheng on the side also hurriedly called out, "Sister Jean, let me touch it too." Ugh. Not far away, Chun Dao, who saw three children playing with Xiao Yuan, smiled and continued to practice boxing with Qin Sheng. Afternoon, Li Ping, Ding Xiaohua, He Zuolian, Feng Xiang, Luo Xiu, and other women were busy cooking in the kitchen. Returning to the living room, Chun Dao said to Li Dabing and the others, "Would you two uncles like to have dinner at home tonight?" Li Dabing scratched his head and asked embarrassedly, "Is this appropriate?" Nowadays, eating at someone else's house is a very disliked behavior, and Li Dabing felt a little embarrassed. What's inappropriate about that? Chun Dao waved his hand and went straight to the backyard. He asked Chun Lian, who was busy working, "Sister Lian, are there any chickens that don't lay eggs today?" "Have." Chun Lian grabbed a yellow-feathered chicken and said to Chun Dao, "This chicken hasn't laid an egg in 2 days. Give it to me then." Chun Dao took the chicken and went straight back into the house. Wu Yin said with some envy, "Dao Gooder's family life is truly like a fairy tale. They always kill chickens to entertain guests." Hearing this, the others couldn't help but nod in agreement. The life of Chun Dao's family was the envy of the whole village. The villagers were very satisfied just to have a bite of steamed bun. How could they be like Chun Dao, who had to kill a chicken every now and then to eat? "When I get my salary, I want to taste some meat too." Wu Yin couldn't help but say that her desire for meat reached its peak at this moment. In addition, she once heard Chun Dao say during a casual chat that eating more meat can make children grow stronger, and if her own children can eat more meat, they will definitely grow better. Chun Dao was naturally unaware of Wu Yun's remarks. Carrying a chicken into the kitchen, he said directly, "Mom, kill this chicken and use it to entertain my two uncles tonight." Having said that, Chun Dao placed the chicken with its feet tied in the kitchen and turned to leave. Feng Xiang and Luo Xiu, who were busy in the kitchen, were stunned when they saw the extremely fat chicken on the ground. In their opinion, Chun Dao treating them with steamed buns and egg drop soup was already a very luxurious act, but they never thought there are even more luxurious ones. Not only are there steamed buns and egg drop soup, there's even meat to eat. "Pingmei, this chicken can't be killed." Feng Xiang quickly said, "We only have steamed buns. Why do we need to kill a chicken?" The chicken that Chun Dao placed in the kitchen was so big, with golden feathers, and it looked very valuable. How could Feng Xiang have the nerve to ask Chun Dao's family to treat her with such a precious thing? "Yes, Pingmei." Luo Xiu also said, "We can just eat some steamed buns. Eating chicken is such a waste." It's not that the two of them don't want to eat meat, but meat is too precious these days. If they asked Chun Dao's family to treat them to a whole chicken, they would inevitably feel guilty. After all, for most people, chickens raised at home are one of the most precious assets and are not something that can be eaten casually. 0. Chapter 114, The Best Food. He Zuolian and Ding Xiaohua couldn't help but laugh when they saw the two women's performance. It seemed that Li Ping's two sisters-in-law didn't know much about the situation in Li Ping's family. "Don't worry, sisters." He Zuolian smiled and said, "It's just a chicken. It's not a big deal. Just eat it with peace of mind." Li Ping slit the chicken's throat to drain the blood, and while she was cleaning the feathers, she said, "We usually kill chickens at home to eat. This chicken isn't as precious as you think." Hearing this, Luo Xiu and Feng Xiang exchanged a glance, feeling that Li Ping's family was a bit too extravagant. They killed chickens to eat from time to time, and even killed chickens to entertain guests. Even the landlords and rich people in the city can't live such a luxurious life, right? While the women were cooking in the kitchen, Chun Dao asked his two uncles in the living room, "Uncle, are you guys in Xiao Village going to have taxes increased too?" Yes. When Li Dabing talked about this, his face was filled with sorrow. The government is trying to force us, common people, to death. In this year, every household has to tighten their belts and barely have enough to eat. And now, they have to increase taxes. And the tax is 2 taels of silver. I have lived for more than 30 years and have never seen a full 2 taels of silver. Not to mention Li Dabing, most ordinary farmers in Xia State rarely see a complete tael of silver. In their daily transactions, they mostly use copper coins and never use silver. However, the government asked them to pay 2 taels of silver at one time, which was obviously a figure that most people could not afford. Our village is ready to resist the tax. Li Feng said, "We really can't pay these 2 taels of silver, so we have no choice but to let the government deal with us. Don't worry, uncles." At this time, Chen Dao smiled and took out his purse, took out 4 taels of silver, and placed it next to Li Dabing's hand. "I have 4 taels of silver here. You can take it back and pay the tax this time." "No, no." Li Dabing shook his head frantically, subconsciously. "Brother Dao, how can we take your money? Take it back quickly." "Yes, Brother Dao, take the money back quickly." Li Feng also refused repeatedly. They felt embarrassed to come to Li Ping's house for free meals, so how could they have a nerve to continue asking Chen Dao for money? You know, the 4 taels of silver that Chen Dao took out is not a small amount. These days, 4 taels of silver is enough to buy 2 beautiful maids. "Take it." Chen Dao forced the silver into Li Dabing's hand and said, "Uncle, take this silver back and pay the tax first. It won't be too late to return it to me later when you have money." Chen Dao knew very well that his 2 uncles would most likely not be able to pay back the money, so he said this just to make his 2 uncles feel at ease to accept the money. As expected, as soon as Chen Dao said this, hesitation appeared on the faces of Li Dabing and Li Feng. To be honest, they really wanted to accept the 4 taels of silver. After all, the consequences of not paying taxes were too scary. It's just because of their simple nature that they feel embarrassed to accept it. After hearing what Chen Dao said, Li Dabing hesitated for a moment, but finally accepted the 4 taels of silver. "Then I'll shamelessly accept it. Don't worry, Brother Dao. I'll definitely pay you back when I have money in the future." Chen Dao smiled and nodded, without saying much on the matter. Instead, he chatted with his 2 uncles about their lives, and also learned about the situation in Xiao village. At the same time, the sun gradually set, and the villagers who were working in the fields returned in groups of 3 or 2. Li Ping and others moved the prepared steamed buns to the front yard in time, and Chen Cheng distributed the steamed buns to the villagers who had returned from work. Feng Xiang and Luo Xiu looked at the villagers queuing up outside the yard to receive steamed buns, and couldn't help but look at each other, seeing the shock in each other's eyes. Only then did they realize that they had underestimated the wealth of Li Ping's family. Not only did they kill chickens from time to time, but they also treated the entire village to steamed buns. There are hundreds of people in Qinjia village. Even if each person gets 3 steamed buns, that would be at least 1,000 steamed buns. Brother Dao, Li Feng, who was standing next to Chen Dao, couldn't help but ask, "Your family is inviting so many people in the village to eat steamed buns. Can the food they have stored last?" "Not bad." Chen Dao replied that he had told Wuhan the last time he came that Wuhan would come to deliver food every 3 days. With the food transported by Wuhan, it would be no problem to feed the entire village of Qinjia village. "Uncles, if your families are having a hard time, you can come to our village to help with the work. At least you won't have a problem with food. Can we do it too?" Li Dabing and Li Feng asked with shining eyes. Although they had 4 taels of silver from Chen Dao, paying taxes was no longer a problem, but eating was still a big problem. If they could eat in Qinjia village, their family's life would undoubtedly be much better. "Sure." Chen Dao smiled and nodded. Seeing that the steamed buns were almost delivered, he said, "Let's go. Let's go back and eat." In the kitchen, the family's meal was ready. Several children were looking at the large plate of fried chicken on the table with shining eyes, and their mouths were almost watering. Especially Li Jin and Li Cheng. These 2 children have not tasted meat for several years, and they have a soul-stirring desire for meat. Not to mention the 2 children, even Li Dabing, Li Feng, Feng Xiang, and Luo Xiu, who had just entered the kitchen, could not help swallowing their saliva. The aroma of meat floating in the air was too strong, which made their bodies instinctively produce a desire. After everyone took their seats, Chen Dao said, "Don't be polite, eat." As he spoke, Chen Dao picked up the white rice in front of him and started to eat. Because they had killed a chicken today, the staple food at home was mainly white rice. However, Chun Dao had no interest in the plate of fried chicken. He ate chicken every day and was a little tired of it. Instead, he was quite interested in the egg drop soup and wild vegetables on the table. He poured himself a bowl of chicken soup and ate white rice with it. While Chun Dao was serving the soup, everyone else started eating. Chun Chung, who had been in Chun Dao's house for many years, didn't show any politeness. He picked up the chicken, but with his chopsticks like flying, and put it into his mouth. Smells so good. Feeling the rich aroma of oil bursting in his mouth, Chun Chung couldn't help but narrow his eyes slightly, revealing a comfortable look. Li Dabing and others also picked up a piece of chicken each, and while chewing, a look of satisfaction appeared on their faces. For farmers like them who haven't had a bite of meat for several years, the taste of fried chicken is incomparable to even the delicacies from heaven. Li Jin, who was sitting next to Chun Dao, picked up a small piece of chicken, tasted it carefully, and his eyes suddenly lit up. What nice smell! Is this the smell of meat? Li Jin couldn't remember how long it had been since she had tasted meat. She just felt that this chicken was the most delicious food she had ever eaten in her life. No doubt about it. Chapter 1:15 Chicken Legs. Cousin, have a chicken drumstick. Noticing Li Jin's expression, Chun Dao picked up the chicken leg from the plate and put it directly into Li Jin's bowl. This cousin was about the same age as him, but she looked so thin, which made Chun Dao feel distressed. Thank you, cousin. Li Jin's eyes flashed with gratitude. There were only 2 chicken legs. Everyone wanted to eat them, but no one was embarrassed to eat them. At this time, Chun Dao passed the chicken legs to her. This action immediately made Li Jin's favorability towards Chun Dao soar. It's a small matter. Chun Dao waved his hand and continued drinking his egg drop soup, while others continued to enjoy the delicious chicken. A yellow-feathered chicken weighs about 8 pounds in total. After removing the feathers, the net meat and internal organs weigh about 5 pounds. It is not a small amount, but there are too many people eating. In a short while, the chicken on the plate was eaten up. It was not until then that everyone noticed the white rice in front of them. White rice is also a rare food for everyone, but just now their attention was all attracted by the chicken, so they ignored the existence of white rice. After finishing the chicken, everyone picked up the white rice and started eating it with the egg drop soup and wild vegetables on the table. A quarter of an hour later, dinner was over and the sun had completely set. Chun Chung went home first, while Chun Dao and Li Ping sent Li Daden and Li Feng's families out. Big brother, second brother, please walk slowly on your way back. Got it. You guys should get some rest too, little sister. After saying goodbye to each other, Li Dabing and others walked toward Xiao village under the dim moonlight. Father. On the way back to the village, Li Chung stroked his belly and said, "The food at my aunt's house is so delicious. I'm so full." Upon hearing this, both Li Jin and the adults showed expressions of agreement. How could it not be delicious with chicken and white rice? They couldn't even eat such good food during the Chinese New Year at home. Dad, can we continue to come to my aunt's house more often? Li Chung asked with hope in his eyes. He was still young and didn't understand much. He only knew that when he went to his aunt's house, he could eat delicious meals instead of eating hard-to-swallow porridge every meal. Li Dabing didn't say anything. He knew that his sister's family had enough food to feed the family, but he still felt embarrassed to go there for free meals every day. Therefore, he did not answer Li Cheng's question, but took out the 4 taels of silver given by Chun Dao from his arms, divided out 2 taels, and handed them to Li Feng. Second brother, take these 2 taels of silver. Don't lose them. Li Feng nodded solemnly, carefully put away the 2 taels of silver, and placed it in the interlayer of his clothes. Where did the money come from? Feng Xiang asked in surprise. When Chun Dao gave the money to Li Dabing and others, she was helping in the kitchen, so she didn't know about it. Of course it was given by Dao. Li Dabing replied. While you were busy in the kitchen, Dao Guer gave us this silver and asked us to use it to pay the tax. Hearing this, Feng Xiang and Luo Xiao suddenly understood, and at the same time, their favorable impression of Chun Dao increased significantly. They deliberately avoided everyone and gave the silver to Li Dabing and Li Feng, which showed that Chun Dao was caring about her husband's face. Chun Dao is young, but I didn't expect him to be so attentive. Brother Dao is such a good boy. Feng Xiang couldn't help but sigh, and at the same time felt fortunate that she had treated Li Ping well in the past. Otherwise, Dao Gur might not have treated her family so well. Not only did he send her 50 kilograms of flour, he also treated her to meat and finally gave her 2 taels of silver to help pay taxes. Brother Dao also said that we can come to Qinjia village to work in the future. Li Dabing continued. As long as you come and help with the work, we can eat white flour buns every day like the villagers in Qinjia village. Really? Upon hearing this, Luo Xiao and Feng Xiang's eyes lit up. If they could eat white flour buns every day like the villagers in Qinjia village, then their food shortage problem would no longer be a problem. Of course it's true. Li Dabao laughed and said, I heard from the villagers of Qinjia village that Dao Guer's words are always reliable. That's good. Feng Xiang laughed and said, then we won't have to worry about having nothing to eat. Feng Xiang had tasted the white flour steamed buns, and they were indeed delicious. Although not as good as meat, they were 1,000,000 times better than the bran flour they ate at home. Being able to eat white flour steamed buns for every meal was enough to make the villagers in Xiao village envious. Brother Dao is so good to us. Luo Xiao couldn't help but sigh. Chun Dao and Li Ping were really nice to them. Luo Xiao felt a little ashamed at this moment, because just yesterday he was still blaming Li Feng for taking the family's food to help Li Ping's family. Li Jin listened quietly to the adult speeches without saying a word, but was wondering in his heart, why did everyone live in such poverty, but his cousin Chun Dao could live such a good life? The next day, the first thing Chun Dao did when he got up was to pull Xiao Yuan out of the quilt and check on its condition. Golden Claw Red Panda. Features: extremely fast, combat power comparable to a 7th grade warrior. Golden Claw Red Panda Advanced Route 1. Mating with Flame Claw Red Panda will produce a Red Blood Red Panda. Specialties of the Red Blood Panda. Its blood can be used as medicine, effective against 7th rank warriors. Its combat power is comparable to that of a peak 7th rank warrior. Golden Claw Red Panda Advancement Route 2. Feed blood bamboo shoots for 7 consecutive days to advance to a Blood Claw Red Panda. Blood Claw Red Panda features: fast speed, sharp claws, combat power comparable to a 6th rank warrior. Advancement successful. A hint of joy appeared on Chun Dao's face. After feeding Iron Heart Bamboo and Bear Blood Flower for 5 consecutive days, Xiao Yuan successfully advanced to become a Golden Claw Red Panda. Looking closely, I saw that Xiao Yuan was still as cute as before, but her claws had undergone a very obvious change. The claws extending from the 4 palms had all turned golden. The sunlight outside the window fell on the claws, flashing a dazzling light, and you could tell at a glance that they were very sharp. Good job, Madoka. Chun Dao gently stroked Xiao Yuan's head. Xiao Yuan seemed to enjoy the touch of his master very much. His furry tail was shaking in a circle like a helicopter propeller, and he kept making happy sound from his mouth. After playing with Xiao Yuan for a while, Chun Dao crawled out of bed and opened the door of his home to the cold wind. But outside the door, Chun Cheng, Chun Lian, and 4 others were already waiting outside. In addition, there were many villagers who had gotten up early and were waiting outside the door for Chun Dao's family to serve dinner. Is Dao Jur up? Good morning, Brother Dao. How did Brother Dao sleep last night? Chapter 116, I can wake up laughing even in my dreams. Seeing Chun Dao opening the door, everyone came forward to greet him enthusiastically. Chun Dao nodded in response, and then welcomed Chun Lian and others into the house. Chun Cheng stayed in the front yard to prevent any accidents. As soon as Chun Dao brought Chun Lian and others to the backyard, he was attracted by several chickens of special size. Blood Claw Chicken. Features: large size, swift movements, combat power comparable to that of an 8th grade warrior. Blood Claw Chicken Advanced Route 1. Mating with a Blood Crown Chicken will hatch an Eagle Feather Chicken. Features of the Eagle Feather Chicken: claws like iron and steel, feathers like a hawk, can briefly float, and its combat power is comparable to that of a 7th grade warrior. Blood Claw Chicken Advancement Route 2. Feed Coxcomb for 7 consecutive days to advance to Iron Feather Chicken. Features of the Iron Feather Chicken: tough wings, sharp claws, and combat power comparable to that of a 7th grade warrior. The Blood Feather Chicken has also successfully advanced. A look of joy appeared on Chun Dao's face again. This time, he fed Blood Ganoderma to a total of 5 Blood Feather Chickens and cultivated a total of 5 Blood Claw Chickens. In other words, Chun Dao once again had 5 fighters equivalent to 8th grade warriors, including Xiao Yuan, Da Huang, and Huang. Chun Dao currently had a combat power of 1 7th grade, 5 8th grade, and 2 9th grade. What kind of concept is this? Even among the big families in the county, the number of warriors they have is only this many. In other words, Chun Dao's current combat power is no less than any of the 3 major families in the county. This chicken is so huge. But at this moment, Chun Lian let out a cry of surprise. She looked at the 5 blood-claw chickens standing tall in the yard, and a trace of fear flashed across her face. Before the blood-claw chickens advanced, the blood-feather chickens were extremely small, weighing only about 2 or 3 pounds. And the advanced blood-claw chicken, when it raised its head could even reach the height of Chun Lian's waist. Such a huge chicken really gave people a sense of oppression. Not only Chun Lian, but also women like Wu Yun subconsciously took a step back, fearing that they would be hurt by the blood-claw chicken. Fortunately, the blood-claw chickens were still loyal to Chun Dao. They did not attack anyone, but came up to Chun Dao and clucked nonstop. They must be hungry. Chun Dao smiled and said to Chun Lian and the others, "Don't be afraid. These chickens won't hurt anyone. Just feed them normally from now on. As long as you don't have any bad intentions, I can guarantee that they will never attack you." Chun Dao is very confident in the animals he has raised. The loyalty of all the animals he has raised is unquestionable, and Xiao Yuan and Xiao He are the best proof of this. We understand. Chun Lian and the others were relieved after seeing that the blood-claw chicken had indeed not hurt anyone. But soon, when they took out food to feed the chickens, they discovered something unusual. These big chickens are such big eaters. Chun Lian stared in amazement at the 5 blood-claw chickens that were pecking at the sorghum on the ground. The other yellow-feathered chickens, including Xiao He, had already eaten their fill and were wandering around. In contrast, the 5 blood-claw chickens still looked unsatisfied. This is the first time I've seen a chicken that eats so much. Me too. They eat more than my damned husband, who died young. The other women also widened their eyes. Up to now, each of the 5 blood-claw chickens had eaten at least 5 kilograms of sorghum, but they showed no signs of stopping. According to this eating method, one blood-claw chicken would eat at least 10 kilograms of sorghum, which is equivalent to the daily food consumption of 5 adults. And this is just the amount for one meal of blood-claw chicken. Chun Dao, who had been observing from the side, couldn't help but frown. The higher the level of an animal, the more food it would eat. He had expected this to happen, and Xiao Yuan was the best proof. In the past, Xiao Yuan only needed to be taken to the bamboo forest to eat some bamboo leaves every day, but now he has to go there 3 times a day to eat, and his demand for food is much higher than before he advanced. But what Chun Dao didn't expect was that these 5 blood-claw chickens could eat so much, consuming 10 kilograms of food per meal. Based on the calculation that an adult consumes 2 kilograms of food per day, eating a blood-claw chicken twice a day is equivalent to the daily consumption of 10 adults. This consumption is a bit too much. But after thinking about it, Chun Dao felt relieved. The blood-claw chicken is a chicken breed equivalent to an 8th grade warrior and an 8th grade warrior. If it only eats grain, it is not a problem for them to eat 30 kilograms a day. The blood-claw chicken's consumption of grain is relatively small. "Brother Dao," Chun Lian asked with some concern, "will we lose money if we eat so many chickens?" "Won't." Chun Dao knew that Chun Lian was considering the cost-effectiveness of raising blood-claw chickens, but Chun Dao had no such concerns at all. He raised blood-claw chickens for his family's safety and had never considered the issue of economic benefits. But, based on the blood-claw chicken's appetite, it is not suitable to cultivate blood-claw chicken in large quantities in a short period of time. Otherwise, the food consumption alone will be enough to make Chun Dao unable to make ends meet. Feed these 5 chickens as much as they eat. Don't worry about saving food. After leaving these words, Chun Dao turned and left. Chun Lian and others felt a little distressed when they saw the blood-claw chicken still eating sorghum. Although this chicken looks big, it's really good at eating. That's right. A strong laborer in the village only eats 2 kilograms of grain a day, but this chicken can eat 20 kilograms a day, which is equivalent to 10 strong laborers. I don't know why Brother Dao raises this kind of chicken. Brother Dao must have his own ideas. Let's not ask too many questions. Just do as Brother Dao says. That's true, but the food consumption is too great. When Chun Dao returned to the front yard, the villagers were queuing up in an orderly manner to receive steamed buns. The outside of the house was filled with the villagers' laughter. They were holding steamed buns and carrying farm tools, talking and laughing all the way to the farmland. Li Dabing and Li Feng with their wives, stood at the end of the line. Looking at the villagers talking and laughing, envy flashed across their faces. The villagers of Qinjia village live such a good life. Li Dabing couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Just doing some farm work can make you eat white flour buns every day. If the villagers knew about this, they would definitely be envious. You do not say. Feng Xiang smiled and said, these days, every household in our Xiao village eats bran flour. If we could eat steam buns, I guess our neighbors would wake up laughing in their dreams. Li Feng and Luo Xiu both laughed. Eating white flour buns every day was a life that no villager in Xiao village could even dream of. But now, because of their relationship with Chun Dao, they can also live such a life. Chapter 1, 17, 8th grade. Soon, Li Dabing and others receive the steamed buns. After tasting the still hot buns, they carry their farm tools to work in the fields. But at this moment, Chun Dao stopped them. Uncle, wait a moment. Several people immediately turn around. Brother Dao, what's the matter? Chun Dao pondered for a moment and said, Uncle, if you two have nothing to do these next 2 days, come with me to the city. This is why Chun Dao plans to train his own people. As his family develops better and better, there will definitely be more and more goods that need to be sold to the city in the future. Helping Chun Dao sell goods is destined to be a profitable business. Wuhan has proved this. Therefore, Chun Dao is thinking about training his uncles to become businessmen and let them live a good life. Of course we are free. Li Dabing naturally didn't think of this, but he still said, there's no problem going into the city with Dao Ger. Good. Chun Dao had no intention of explaining. He nodded and watched Li Dabing and the others leave. After they left, Chun Dao said to Chun Chung, Brother Chung, go inform Uncle and Chun Si and the others that we will go to the city together in 2 days. Okay, Brother Dao. Chun Chung ran away and returned soon after. Then Chun Dao started killing chickens and practicing boxing. After drinking a mouthful of chicken blood, Chun Dao took a stance and performed the tiger-subduing fist seriously, one move at a time. Crack! After finishing a round of Fu Hu Quan, a sound suddenly came from Chun Dao's body. Chun Dao, who carefully noticed the changes in himself, showed a happy smile on his face. 9th grade warriors refine their skin, and 8th grade warriors strengthen their bones. The sound that just echoed in his body was the sound of qi and blood filling up and feeding back into the bones. In other words, at this time, Chun Dao had broken through to become an 8th grade warrior. Not only did he possess a huge strength of 500 kilograms, he also had bones as hard as steel. On the other side, Chun Chung, who had just finished practicing boxing, walked to the stone lock and lifted the 400 gene stone lock in one go. Seeing this, Chun Dao's eyes lit up. Chun Chung really did not disappoint him. Chun Chung, who was born with great strength, was not even a 9th grade warrior, but he possessed strength close to that of an 8th grade warrior. Brother Dao, who had placed the 400 gene stone lock securely on the ground, scratched his head and said, I feel like my skin has changed a lot. Hearing this, Chun Dao stepped forward and carefully looked at Chun Cheng's exposed skin. Because Chun Cheng had been exposed to wind and sun for many years, his skin was very dark. At this time, sweat soaked his skin, making it look shiny black. Chun Dao reached out and pinched the skin on Chun Cheng's arm, only to find it was very tough. At this point, Chun Dao was basically certain that Chun Cheng had already entered the realm of a 9th grade warrior. Congratulations, Brother Chung. Chun Dao said with a smile. You are now a 9th rank warrior. 9th rank warrior? Chun Cheng's eyes lit up. Warriors have always been regarded as mysterious, noble and powerful figures by the villagers. Chun Cheng never thought that he would become a warrior one day. Brother Dao, thank you for giving me this opportunity. Chun Cheng's heart was filled with gratitude. He knew very well that he could become a 9th rank warrior thanks to the skills Chun Dao gave him and his constant encouragement every day. Therefore, he did not feel proud at all, but instead thanked Chun Dao solemnly. You deserve it. Chun Dao patted Chun Cheng on the shoulder and said, Follow me carefully in the future, and you and your family will be able to live a good life with meat every meal sooner or later. Chun Cheng nodded solemnly. He had unconditional trust in Chun Dao. Since Chun Dao said that they could live such a good life, then they would definitely be able to live that life. He firmly believed in this. 2 days later, early morning, a total of 8 people, including Chun Da, Chun Si, Chun Jiang, Li Dabing, Li Feng, and the 3 brothers Chun Cheng, gathered in front of Qindao's house. Around these 8 people were women like Chun Lian, who helped raise chickens at Qindao's house, as well as villagers who were waiting for dinner. Chunda and the others have gathered again. Are they heading into the city? We must be heading into the city. Didn't you see the village chief has borrowed a donkey cart? Is it because the food consumption has been too high recently that Brother Dao has to go to the city to buy food? Probably not. Looking at the donkey cart pulled by Chunda, the villagers immediately realized that Chunda and others were probably going into the city again. Uncle, Chingo approached Chunda with curiosity and asked, "Are you going into the city?" Chunda glanced at Chungo and said, "Yes, Dao Guder said he want to go into the city." "Is that so?" Chungo scratched his head, a flash of envy in his eyes. The young people in the village were very yearning for the prosperity of the county town, and Chungo was no exception. Unfortunately, Chun Dao did not invite him to go together. Squeak. At this time, Chun Dao's door opened. Standing inside, Chun Dao looked at everyone and said, "Everyone is here? Let's have breakfast first." As soon as Chun Dao finished speaking, Li Ping and others carried out rice buckets and began to distribute steamed buns to the villagers. Chun Dao also welcomed Chunda and others into the house, and they ate breakfast while chatting about going to the city. After breakfast, the villagers carried their farm tools to work in the fields, while Chun Dao carried several chicken cages and took a dozen newly raised blood-feathered chickens onto a donkey cart and headed towards the county town. Walking on the official road leading to the county town, one can still see refugees with miserable looks. Chun Dao knows that most of these refugees, like Ding Xiaohua, came from Liangzhou in the north. The cold weather in Liangzhou, coupled with the constant conscription and tax increases, led to more and more people fleeing to Qingzhou. As the donkey cart approached the county town, Chun Dao looked towards the huts where the refugees gathered and suddenly frowned. Why are there so few refugees outside the city? Chun Dao looked at the suddenly decreasing number of refugees outside the city with a look of confusion on his face. In addition, Chun Dao also noticed that there were government officials distributing porridge outside the city. Why is the word porridge in quotation marks? Because this time the government really distributed porridge. Although the porridge was so thin that you could see the reflection of people's faces, the bowls held by many refugees were indeed filled with rice. These refugees actually have rice porridge to eat? Li Dabing and Li Feng were even more stunned, feeling unbelievable. Those of them who hadn't yet become refugees couldn't even eat rice porridge, while the refugees outside the city did have rice porridge to eat. Both of them couldn't help but want to become refugees. The government is so kind. Chun Si and the others were also incredulous. They often traveled to the county town with Chun Dao and knew too well what life was like for the refugees outside the city. In the past, the refugees they saw couldn't even afford a bite of bran rice, but now they had rice porridge to eat. This simply overturned Chun Si and others' understanding of the refugees outside the city. Chapter 118 Fading. At the city gate, 2 unfamiliar soldiers with swords on their waists were watching the people coming in and out with vigilance. Next to the 2 of them was Zhang He, who was wearing the uniform of a constable. After a few days of training by the people arranged by Su Jiwen, Zhang He and his refugee brothers began to take up their posts. Zhang He and his close brothers, such as Shouho, became captains and constables in the yamen, while the rest of the brothers were assigned to the city walls to serve as city guards. Zhang He and his brothers were very satisfied with this arrangement. A few days ago, they were refugees who could not even get enough food to eat, but now they have changed their lives and are eating public food. Not only can they eat their fill every day, but they also receive a salary every month. Their lives have changed dramatically. Of course, Zhang, he also had something he was unhappy about, which was he was not the only chief constable in the county government. There was also another chief constable named Yuan Jiang. Yuan Jiang has been serving as the chief constable in the county government for several years. His position is stable, and he is an 8th rank warrior. His influence is far beyond that of Zhang He. Except for Zhang He's own brothers, all other constables in the county government obey Yuan Jiang's orders, resulting in Zhang He, the constable, only having his brother Shouho and others under his command. I still have to become a warrior as soon as possible. Zhang He sighed inwardly. Although Yuan Jiang was powerful, he had the support of the county magistrate, so he might not be afraid of Yuan Jiang. However, the struggle in the county government sometimes depended not only on the backers, but also on one's own strength. Yuan Zhang's strength as an 8th-rank warrior meant that the constables and the county government would trust Yuan Zhang more than Zhang He. Therefore, at this time Zhang He especially hoped that he could become a warrior as soon as possible so that he would have the strength to fight Yuan Zhang. Another point is, Zhang He was the murderer who personally killed the entire Zhu family, and Yuan Zhang was a member of the Yuan family. Although Yuan Zhang has not yet found out who is responsible for the Zhu family's massacre, once he finds out, he will probably not be able to escape. In this situation, the power to protect oneself became the most urgent thing for Zhang He. Stop! But at this moment, the city guards in front of Zhang He stopped the donkey cart. Zhang He looked over and saw several men sitting on the donkey cart. The youngest-looking man among the men took out 10 copper coins from his purse and was about to hand them over to the city guard, but the guard waved them away and said, "The rules have changed. From now on, you don't need to pay the entrance fee to enter the city, but your goods will be inspected." The impact caused by the last influx of refugees into the city sounded a wake-up call to the people and nobles of the city. Therefore, during this period, the inspection of people and goods entering and leaving the city has become much stricter. As he spoke, the soldier began to carefully check the cargo on the donkey cart. In fact, there was nothing to check. There was only a chicken cage and a dozen chickens in the cage on the donkey cart. Only the soldier in charge of the inspection looked at the blood-red chicken in the cage and couldn't help but ask, "Why is your chicken so unique?" Although the soldier was a refugee before, he had seen chickens before. In his impression, most of the chickens he had seen had gray feathers. How could there be a chicken with blood-red feathers and so small in size? "We caught this chicken in the mountains," Chun Dao quickly explained. "This time we're going to transport it into the city to sell it to Master Li of the Fuhu boxing gym. Please, General, please help me." In order to enter the city smoothly, Chun Dao had to use Li Hu to endorse him, but he did not notice that when he mentioned the name of Fuhu boxing gym, Zhang He, who was standing behind the two soldiers, had a thoughtful glint in his eyes. "Is it the goods sold to Master Li?" The soldier inspecting the goods thought for a moment, then waved his hand and said, "Go in." "Thank you, Master Jun." Chun Dao tried his best to act like a farmer's son. While expressing his gratitude, he asked Chun Si, who was driving the donkey cart, to enter the city. Zhang He, on the other hand, was looking at the backs of Chun Dao and the others, muttering to himself, "The chicken sold to Master Li must be something special." Zhang He knew very well that the kind of chicken that Li Hu liked was definitely not an ordinary chicken. Maybe that chicken would be of some benefit to warriors. Zhang He, who was eager to become a martial artist, suddenly thought of going to the Fuhu boxing gym to inquire about it. In the county town, the impact caused by the influx of refugees a few days ago has largely faded, and the bloodstains on the roads have mostly been washed away, with no trace of blood left. It's just, during that turmoil, some people lost their property, some lost their loved ones, and some lost both their wealth and their lives. Their grief may have been witnessed by others, or perhaps no one saw it. In short, as time goes by, grief will gradually weaken until it disappears completely. There are so many people in the county town. Li Dabing looked at the people coming and going in the city and couldn't help but sigh. The situation in the county town is very different from that in Xiao Village. Due to the lack of food and clothing, every household in Xiao Village hides at home to avoid the cold and try to reduce food consumption. In contrast, in the county town, people were coming and going as if the cold weather had no effect at all. Someone still selling steamed buns. Li Feng looked at a stall selling steamed buns on the roadside and said with a smile. Chun Dao ignored their words and said to Chun Si, who was driving, "Let's go to Wu Han's house first." The specific address of Wu Han's home had already been told to Chun Dao, which was near the East Market. A quarter of an hour later, the donkey cart stopped in front of a house. Chun Dao jumped off the cart and knocked on the door. "Who is it?" Soon, a voice with a hint of vigilance came from inside the door. Chun Dao immediately replied, "Brother Wu, I'm Chun Dao." Squeak! The door opened, revealing a smiling Wu Han. "It's Brother Chun. Come in and sit down quickly. Brothers from Chun Village, come in quickly too. It's cold outside." Everyone followed Wu Han to the living room and took their seats. Wu Han shouted towards the bedroom, "Wife, Brother Chun is here. Come out quickly." "Here I come." Not long after, a woman in her 40s walked out of the bedroom. Her eyes immediately locked onto Chun Dao, and she said with a smile, "You're Chun Dao, right? Old Wu often tells me about you. He says that if it weren't for your help, he'd probably still be starving. Thank you for the compliment, sister-in-law." Chen Dao smiled and responded, "Brother Wu also helped me a lot." "No, no." Wu Han quickly waved his hands and said, "It's all because your brother Chun thinks highly of me, old Wu. Otherwise, how could I have earned so much money?" Wu Han's gratitude to Chen Dao was sincere. Not only did Chen Dao give him the exclusive white feather chicken business, but he also successfully connected him to the Fuhu boxing gym. Chapter 119 Plunder. To be honest, the fact that Wu Han has made so much money recently has not escaped the attention of those who are interested. In the past, Wu Han, who has made so much money, might not have been able to keep this wealth. Fortunately, the white feather chicken business established some connections between him and the Fuhu boxing gym. Relying on the reputation of the Fuhu boxing gym, he was able to barely maintain this little bit of wealth. "Please sit down first. I'll make you some tea." Zhang didn't stay in the living room for long. She quickly ran into the kitchen and started boiling water to make tea. Soon after, tea was served. Zhang knew that it was not appropriate for her to stay in the living room with so many men for a long time, so she returned to the bedroom. Chen Dao picked up the tea and took a sip. He felt that it was not much different from boiled water. The tea from Wu Han's family was definitely not a precious high-quality tea. The tea tasted very bland and even a bit bitter. "Is this tea?" Li Dabing took a sip of tea and looked at the tea leaves floating in the cup. He was quite satisfied with the taste of the tea. At least it was better than boiled water, although it was a bit bitter. The tea at home is not good, so we just have to make do with it. Wu Han also took a sip of the tea. He knew very well that the tea in his family was of the lowest quality. It was somewhat inappropriate to use this tea to entertain Chen Dao, a distinguished guest. But he had no other choice. After all, those expensive and high-quality teas were not affordable for someone like Wu Han. "That's pretty good." Chen Dao didn't say much about this matter, but suddenly asked, "Brother Wu, has anything big happened in the city recently?" "Brother Chun, don't you know?" Wu Han asked subconsciously, and then realized that Chen Dao was not from the county town. Wu Han thought for a moment and said in a deep voice, "A while ago, refugees rushed into the city." "What?" Chen Dao, including Chunda and others, were all shocked. Refugees entering the city was no small matter. Once those starving refugees rushed into the city, they would definitely cause a huge disaster. "It happened on the day I was a guest at your home, Brother Chun." Wu Han seemed unfazed by the crowd's surprise and slowly said, "That night, a group of thieves stole the weapons of the soldiers defending the city and killed them on the spot. They then rushed into the city, and other refugees followed them, looting the city wantonly." Hiss! Chen Dao and others couldn't help but gasp. No wonder they saw so many fewer refugees outside the city just now. It turned out that such a big thing had happened. "Brother Wu, your family shouldn't have suffered any disaster, right?" Chen Dao couldn't help but ask with concern. Wu Han was his only partner now, and he was quite concerned about his partner's safety. "There's nothing wrong at home." Wu Han shook his head and said, "But those who lived near the North Gate suffered. Many people had their food and money robbed, and the men were killed by the refugees and the women." Wu Han sighed softly. Women didn't fare any better either. They were all abused by those refugees. Chen Dao was silent. He was surprised, but not particularly surprised. Chen Dao has always believed that the refugees outside the city are a time bomb in Taiping County. Once the bomb explodes, the turmoil it causes will definitely be considerable. What Wu Han said also confirmed Chen Dao's judgment. That is, when these originally honest refugees suddenly revolted, the people at the bottom of society were always the ones who suffered the most. The wealthy families had their own guards and servants to protect their own safety, but the common people at the bottom could only be bullied by the rising refugees. "Brother Chun, you were a little late." Wu Han continued. "If you had come here a few days ago, you would have seen every household near the North City gate in mourning. I heard from an official I know that at least hundreds of people died when refugees entered the city that night, and no fewer than 1,000 households had their money and food stolen by the refugees. Is the impact so great?" Li Dabing couldn't help but widen his eyes. Hundreds of people died at once, which was equivalent to the population of the entire Xiao village. In other words, the casualties caused by the influx of refugees into the city were equivalent to the massacre of an entire village. "You do not say." Wu Han revealed another shocking story. Not only did the people near the North City gates suffer, but even the Zhu family in the city were affected. That night, the Zhu family was celebrating the old patriarch's 90th birthday, and there were crowds of guests. However, No one, not even the Zhu family members, nor the guests attending the birthday party, could escape the refugees' butchery. Everyone, from top to bottom, was slaughtered. What? Chen Dao was completely unable to sit still. He knew about the Zhu family. They were one of the three major families in Taiping County, along with the Yuan and Fong families. They had existed in Taiping County for over 100 years. Not only were they wealthy, but they also had a large number of warriors. But they were slaughtered by a group of insignificant refugees. This was really hard for Chen Dao to believe. Not only Chen Dao, but even Chunda and others were dumbfounded. Everyone in Taiping County has heard of the Zhu family. They are one of the most powerful families in Taiping County. How could they be killed by a group of refugees who entered the city? Brother Wu, are you kidding me? Chen Dao couldn't help but ask. The Zhu family has so many warriors. How could they be invaded by a group of refugees and be completely slaughtered? To be honest, when I first heard the news, I didn't believe it, just like you, Brother Chen. Wu Han said, but the news that came later proved that the Zhu family was indeed wiped out. 2 days ago, I went to take a look near the Zhu family's house, and it was completely empty. It looked like a haunted house. Chen Dao sucked in a breath of cold air, wondering if he had overestimated the warriors or underestimated the fighting power of the refugees outside the city. To be able to wipe out the Zhu family, which had so many warriors, the fighting power of those refugees was probably no less than that of the army. Only, Chen Dao was still a little suspicious. He had seen those refugees outside the city. They were all pale and skinny, and they couldn't even get enough to eat. It was no exaggeration to say that Chen Dao could easily beat 20 of them by himself. How could these hungry and weak refugees have the ability to wipe out the Zhu family? There must be some reason that I don't understand. Chen Dao pondered secretly and couldn't help but think in the direction of conspiracy theory. The Zhu family's extermination must have been caused by other forces otherwise. Just looking at the refugees outside the city, Chen Dao really didn't think they had the strength to wipe out the Zhu family. But this is not right. In the entire Taiping County, the only two families that have the ability to wipe out the Zhu family are the Yuan family and the Fong family, which are also one of the three major families. Even the county government does not have this ability. As for the Yuan family and the Fong family, according to what Chen Dao learned from the casual conversation with Li Hu, these two families have always been closely related to the Zhu family, and there is no reason at all to wipe out the Zhu family. Chapter 120 Cruel and Merciless. Chen Dao thought about it for a long time and found that no matter how he thought about it, the extermination of the Zhu family was full of conspiracy. At this time, Wu Han lowered his voice and said mysteriously, rumor has it that the Zhu family's extermination was very likely related to the county magistrate. County magistrate? Chunda and others looked at each other in surprise. The title of county master is generally used to address the highest official in the county, just like the title of county magistrate, often used by villagers. Both are used to address the county magistrate. The county magistrate secretly wiped out the Zhu family. Is this county magistrate so cruel and ruthless? But I think that's unlikely. Wu Han continued, Brother Chen, you live far from the county town, so you may not know the situation in the county government. In our Taiping County, the real bosses are actually the three major families. The county magistrate is nothing but a clay statue. He can't even control the county government, let alone wipe out the Zhu family. As a peddler, Wu Han was well informed. In the eyes of ordinary people, the county magistrate was the most powerful figure in the entire Taiping County and had the ability to wipe out the Zhu family. But Wu Han knew very well that the magistrate of Taiping County had no power at all. If he wanted to wipe out the Zhu family, let alone whether he could do so, he would probably die suddenly at home the day after he expressed this idea. After all, except for a few officials of the imperial court, almost all other personnel in the entire county government, from top to bottom, are from the three major families. Chen Dao nodded. When he was chatting with Li Hu, they also talked about the situation in the Taiping County Government Office. He knew very well that the county magistrate was just a figurehead and had no power to exterminate the Zhu family. But if it wasn't the county magistrate, who else could have wiped out the Zhu family? Chen Dao thought for a long time, but couldn't come up with an answer. So he gave up and said to Wu Han, Brother Wu, I'm here to ask for your help. What's the matter? Just tell me, Brother Chen. Wu Han agreed without thinking. Chun Dao gave him such a great benefit, so he naturally didn't mind helping Chun Dao. Chun Dao paused and said, I want Brother Wu to take my two uncles to do business. As he spoke, Chun Dao looked at Li Dabing and Li Feng and introduced them to Wu Han. This is Li Dabing, my eldest uncle, and this is Li Feng, my second uncle. Li Dabing and Li Feng looked at each other and quickly stood up and clasped their fists towards Wu Han. Chun Dao had already told them in advance that he wanted them to learn how to do business, so the two were not too surprised at the moment. Instead, Wu Han hesitated and asked, Brother Chun, are you planning to let them learn how to do business for me? Right. Chun Dao nodded. This was his purpose. He wanted Li Dabing and Li Feng to learn from Wu Han and understand some business skills so that it would be easier for them to sell the goods from Qinjia village in the future. That's fine. Wu Han readily agreed, then added, but, Brother Chun, this shouldn't affect my white feather chicken business, right? Of course not. Chun Dao smiled and said, Brother Wu, please rest assured. The white-feathered chickens will definitely be supplied to you first. As for my two uncles, they will sell other goods in the future. Chun Dao's family now has quite a few types of livestock. In addition to yellow-feathered chickens and blood-feathered chickens, they have also added ducks. In the future, there will be food and other things. There is no need to worry about not having goods to sell. What they lack is a trustworthy supplier. That's good. Wu Han immediately felt relieved. As long as teaching Li Daden and the other man how to do business did not involve his interests, he would naturally be willing to help. Wu Han and Chun Dao discussed Li Dabing and Li Feng's joining the caravan, and they quickly agreed on the details. For the next month, Li Dabing and Li Feng would live in Wu Han's home, accompanying Wu Han's caravan as guards. During this time, Wu Han would try his best to teach them his business skills, and the price they would have to pay was serving as guards for Wu Han's caravan for free, of course. This was not unacceptable to Li Dabing and Li Feng. After all, they could eat and drink for free while living in Wu Han's house. This was the treatment Wu Han gave them for Chun Dao's sake. Otherwise, the two might have to solve the problem of eating by themselves. Then it's settled. After the matter was finalized, Chun Dao looked at Li Dabing and Li Feng and said, Uncles, just rest assured and study with Brother Wu. In a month, I promise that you'll have a good life. Li Dabing and Li Feng nodded solemnly. Wu Han smiled and said, Brother Chun, you finally made it here. Would you like to have a simple meal here tonight? No. Chun Dao shook his head and declined. I have some things to do, so I won't stay here with Brother Wu for long. After saying that, Chun Dao stood up and led Chun Da and others out of Wu Han's house and headed towards the Fuhu boxing gym. Wu Han, who had been escorting Chun Dao at the door and watching them leave, turned a glance at the somewhat reserved Li Dabing and Li Feng and said with a smile, You two don't have to be so reserved. Just treat my home like your own. Although Wu Han said so, Li Dabing and the others were still a little uncomfortable. They had lived for decades, and it was the first time for them to live in someone else's home, so they were somewhat uncomfortable. It is estimated that it will take at least several days for the two of them to adapt to life in Wu Han's home. Fu boxing jeep synonyme backyard. Li Hu and Su Jiwen were sitting opposite each other at the stone table drinking tea. Ever since the two of them worked together to wipe out the Zhu family, Su Jiwen and Li Hu had become tied to the same rope and quickly became familiar with each other. Things like the two of them sitting together drinking tea have been happening frequently recently. Not far from the two of them was Li Ying, who was practicing the tiger subduing fist. After Li Hu entered the 7th level, the effect of the blood feather chicken on him was much less, so he gave all the blood feather chicken he got from Chun Dao to Li Ying for consumption. With the help of the blood feather chicken and the chicken meat, Li Ying made rapid progress during this period and was already approaching the 8th level. Li Hu took a sip of tea, glanced at Li Ying, who was practicing boxing, and said, The Yuan family has been quite dissatisfied with you, the county master, recently. The rumors in the streets are not groundless. The reason why there are rumors that it was the county magistrate who wiped out the Zhu family is because the Yuan family placed their suspicion on Su Jiwen. The Yuan family and the Fong family are not fools. They know very well that the refugees outside the city simply cannot have the ability to wipe out the Zhu family. Therefore, they immediately cast their suspicions on the major forces in the city. The first target worthy of suspicion is naturally Su Jiwen, who has always been at odds with the three major families. After all, the last time Su Jiwen called on the major forces in the city to donate money and food, the dissatisfaction was already written on his face, and it was hard not to suspect him, Su Jiwen. Chapter 121. Enter his mother. But it's just a suspicion. Neither the Yuan family nor the Fong family knew that Su Jiwen was a 7th-rank warrior, and Su Jiwen did not have much power to mobilize in Taiping County, so it was also impossible for him to wipe out the Zhu family. Therefore, the Yuan family and the Fong family only had slight suspicions and did not identify Su Jiwen as the murderer who wiped out the Zhu family. Of course, compared to the murderer who wiped out the Zhu family, the Yuan family and the Fong family actually care more about the Zhu family's money and food. In their opinion, after the Zhu family was wiped out, the Zhu family's money, grain, and resources should naturally be inherited by them. But on the night when the Zhu family was exterminated, the money, grain, and medicinal materials stored in the Zhu family's warehouses and shops disappeared. When the people from the Yuan family and the Fong family opened the warehouse, they saw only empty houses that were almost enough to starve a mouse to death. This undoubtedly made the Yuan and Fong families very angry. The murderer who wiped out the Zhu family was really hateful. Not only did he kill the entire Zhu family, he also emptied all the supplies of the Zhu family. It was obvious that he came prepared. While feeling annoyed, the Yuan and Fong families were also secretly frightened. The murderer was so determined to exterminate the Zhu family that it was hard to guarantee that he would not target their own 2 families in the future. Realizing this, the Yuan and Fong families immediately increased their efforts to search for information about the murderer. It's a pity they're just doing useless work. Xia country is not like the Hua country in Chun Dao's previous life. It is still brightly lit at night. In fact, Taiping County was completely dark at night. Even the people in the city could not see the appearance of Zhang He and other refugees clearly. All the Zhu family members and guests who had seen the appearance of Zhang He and others were killed. In this situation, no matter how powerful the Yuan and Fong families were, they could not find the murderer who wiped out the Zhu family. They could only collect useful information like headless flies every day. So what if I'm dissatisfied? Su Jiwen chuckled and said, they might suspect I was the one who did it, but they can never be sure. After all, in your eyes, I've always been a weak scholar. The identity of a weak scholar is Su Jiwen's best protection. No one would have thought that he, a weak scholar, is secretly a powerful 7th-grade warrior. And even if they knew, what would happen? Su Jiwen asked again, could they possibly kill me? Although Su Jiwen was only a minor official, he was also an official of the imperial court with a rank of 7th. Attacking and killing an official of the 7th rank in the imperial court was a crime that even the Yuan and Fong families did not dare to take. Therefore, as long as the Yuan family and the Fong family do not want to rebel, Su Jiwen's life will not be in danger. Of course, the Yuan and Fong families could also choose to assassinate him, but Su Jiwen is a 7th-rank warrior. How could it be so easy for the Yuan and Fong families to assassinate him? The Yuan and Fong families wouldn't dare to openly deal with the county lord. Li Hu said, but the county lord should be more careful. After all, these big families have a lot of dirty tricks in secret. I know. Su Jiwen nodded, looked at Li Ying, who was boxing, and said, Brother Li's daughter is quite talented. Su Jiwen, who often visited the Fuhu boxing gym during this period, often saw Li Ying practicing boxing. From his observation, Li Ying's progress was undoubtedly very fast. In just a few days, he was about to enter the 8th level. Your Excellency is so kind. Li Hu smiled but said nothing. He naturally knew that Su Jiwen had guessed something, but he still wanted to try his best to prevent the county magistrate from knowing about the blood feather chicken. However, at this moment, 2 figures appeared at the door of the backyard. The perceptive Li Hu turned around and looked. A smile suddenly appeared on his face. Young friend Chen is here? The people who appeared in the backyard were none other than Chun Dao and his personal bodyguard Chen Cheng. Chen Xiaoyu, come and sit here. Li Hu patted the stone table beside him, motioning Chun Dao to sit down, and introduced him. My dear Chun, this is Su Xianzuan from Taiping County. County Master, this is Mr. Chun Dao. Listening to Li Hu's introduction, Chun Dao glanced at Su Jiwen, who was sitting opposite Li Hu, and couldn't help feeling familiar. Then he thought about it, and remembered that he had seen this person outside the door when he left Fuhu boxing gym last time. I didn't expect that he was the county magistrate of Taiping County. Chun Dao thought to himself that because of the tax increase, he had a bad impression of the county magistrate. But Chun Dao was no child after all, and he didn't show any disgust on his face. He just clasped his fist towards Su Jiwen and said, My boy Chun Dao greets the county master. Su Jiwen looked at Chun Dao in front of him, a thoughtful look in his eyes. The young man was dressed very ordinary, even poorly, in a coarse cloth with patches on it, a typical look of a poor farmer's boy. But such a farmer's boy could make Li Hu so enthusiastic. This is obviously very abnormal. In addition, Su Jiwen also noticed Chun Cheng, who was standing behind Chun Dao like an iron tower. Chun Cheng's height was undoubtedly very oppressive. With a height of 1.8 meters, he could be regarded as a crane among chickens in Xia country. After he started practicing martial arts, Chun Cheng's muscles were also far better than before. The clothes on his body were held up high by his muscles. Standing there, he was like an iron tower, really majestic. Where is Chun Xiaoyu from? Su Jiwen asked calmly. I am from Taiping County. Chun Dao answered concisely. Su Jiwen was speechless. Then he realized that he had asked a nonsense question. Nowadays, due to the limitations of transportation and the household registration system, ordinary people, except for businessmen, rarely leave their hometowns. The fact that Chun Dao could appear in the Fuhu boxing gym meant that he was most likely from Taiping County. My dear Chun, our county magistrate is a rare and good official. At this time, Li Hu beside him said, in order to relieve the burden of tax increases on the people of Taiping County, our county magistrate personally exterminated the entire Zhu family. When Li Hu said this, not only Chun Dao was shocked, but even Su Jiwen was stunned. What surprised Chun Dao was that the rumors were actually true, and the mastermind behind the extermination of the Zhu family was actually the county magistrate. Su Jiwen was stunned because he had always thought Li Hu was someone who could keep secrets, but he didn't expect. Li Hu was such a big mouth. Li Hu I casually told this strange boy. Fuck him. Su Jiwen, the scholar, couldn't help but curse in his heart. He was already considering whether to break up with Li Hu. If he kept associating with such a person who couldn't keep secrets, he would be killed by him sooner or later. After being stunned for a while, Chun Dao's eyes rolled and he said, I didn't hear what Master Li said just now. Hearing this, Su Jiwen couldn't help but admire the boy's quick thinking. In just a few breaths, he realized that this was not something he could know, so he pretended not to hear and distanced himself from it. But this was obviously useless. Li Hu had a loud voice and spoke clearly. What he just said might not be heard outside, but Chun Dao, who was sitting next to the stone table, could definitely hear it clearly. Young friend Chun, there's no need to be shy. Li Hu took a deep look at the small circle on Chun Dao's shoulder and said with a smile, it was County Master Su who wiped out the entire Zhu family, not you. There's no need to be afraid. There were 10,000 horses galloping through Su Jiwen's heart. This Li Hu's mouth was comparable to that of a gossip woman. However, Su Jiwen also realized by then that Li Hu was not a talkative person. Su Jiwen, who had been in frequent contact with Li Hu during this period, was very sure of this. In this case, Li Hu specifically told Chun Dao about this matter, which seemed to be very meaningful. Thinking of this, Su Jiwen said, Master Li, you're joking. I'm not the only one who wiped out the Zhu family. Didn't you, Master Li, take action as well? Chun Dao opened his mouth, regretting his trip today. Damn, is it appropriate for you to talk about such a big thing in front of me? I'm only a 15-year-old kid. Chun Dao was completely speechless. He didn't know what had happened to Li Hu. He said such a shocking thing in front of him, as if he wanted to drag him down with him. Etc. Drag me into this? Chun Dao was stunned and looked at Li Hu deeply. This Master Li must have noticed his unusualness and was trying to pull him into the same boat. Li did take action, but the mastermind was you, County Master Su. Li Hu turned to Chun Dao and said, you may not believe this, but the county magistrate's purpose in eliminating the Zhu family was to provide food for the refugees outside the city and to reduce the tax burden on the people of Taiping County. Do you think County Magistrate Su is a good official? Yes. Chun Dao nodded without hesitation. His impression of Su Jiwen had changed a lot. Because of the starving people outside the city and the tax increase, Chun Dao had a bad impression of the Taiping County Magistrate and even felt a little disgusted. But after listening to Li Hu's story, I realized that the county magistrate, Su Jiwen, might not be an honest official like Hai Rui, but he was definitely an official who cared about the people. In this feudal society, an official who cared about the people was definitely the best official. What a pity. Su Jiwen sighed helplessly. The grain I've looted from the Zhu family is only enough to cover the imperial court's tax increase this time. In Su Jiwen's original idea, After eliminating the Zhu family, the grain obtained should be able to cope with the tax increase of the court and at the same time resettle the refugees outside the city. But what he never expected was that the amount of grain in the Zhu family was far less than he had originally imagined. After paying the increased taxes to the court, the remaining grain was not enough to accommodate the refugees outside the city. Why doesn't the county magistrate make use of the refugees outside the city? Chen Dao tentatively suggested, there's countless abandoned land outside the city right now. If we could just give those refugees a bite to eat, they'd probably be willing to help the county magistrate. All he needs to do is mobilize them to reclaim the wasteland. Next year, we'll be able to harvest plenty of fertile land, and by then, we'll naturally have enough food to produce. It may sound absurd to say that the land outside the city is abandoned, but it is indeed a real thing. As the weather became extremely cold, the land could not produce crops, and the court repeatedly increased taxes. The people were really overwhelmed. In order to avoid the court's tax increases, countless people abandoned their land and chose to become refugees so that they would not have to face the court's conscription and tax increases. Therefore, there are actually quite a lot of wastelands outside Taiping County at this time. These wastelands only need to be slightly reclaimed and can immediately become fertile fields. If all of them can be reclaimed, by next year, perhaps crops can be grown to solve the food shortage in Taiping County. My friend, this is a brilliant plan. Su Jiwen's eyes lit up, then quickly dimmed again. It's a pity that I can't provide enough food for those refugees. It is common sense that the harder a person works, the bigger his appetite will be. If the refugees outside the city are mobilized to open up wasteland, the amount of food needed will be an astronomical figure. Now, after paying the tax on the food looted from the Zhu family, it is difficult to even provide the refugees with porridge, let alone feed them enough to open up wasteland. Chen Dao opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His idea was very good. He wanted to use the method of work for relief to let the refugees open up wasteland so that they could harvest a lot of fertile land in the next year. However, he forgot that the food stored in Su Jiwen's hands was not enough to supply the refugees with work. It was obviously unrealistic to let the refugees work on an empty stomach without enough food. Brother Chun, you're here. At this moment, Li Ying, who had just finished practicing boxing, wiped the sweat off his face and walked over to sit next to Chen Dao. His big eyes fell on Chen Dao, and he asked, "What kind of chicken did Brother Chen bring this time? Chicken breed?" Su Jiwen's eyes fell on the chicken coop carried by Chen Cheng. In fact, he had noticed the chicken coop carried by Chen Cheng a long time ago, and also noticed the strange breed of chicken in the cage, but he was distracted by Li Hu's big mouth just now and did not have time to ask questions. "I brought a total of 15 blood feather chickens this time." Chen Dao smiled and replied, "According to the previous price, 20 taels each, a total of 300 taels of silver. This batch of blood feather chickens was specially bred by Chen Dao to help the villagers pay taxes. The silver earned from the sale of 15 blood feather chickens was more than enough to pay the increased taxes for the entire Chenjia village. But after talking with Li Hu and Su Jiwen just now, Chen Dao could probably guess that he probably wouldn't have to pay the tax increase this time. However, Chen Dao still planned to sell this batch of blood feather chickens and hand over the rent to the villagers, at least to improve the lives of the villagers in Chenjia village. Blood feathered chicken? Su Jiwen's eyes flickered when he heard the name. He had never heard of a chicken breed with this name. Moreover, one chicken was sold for 20 taels of silver. At this price, it was obviously not an ordinary chicken breed. So much. Li Hu was surprised. In his opinion, blood feather chicken was a precious and rare breed of chicken. The number that Chen Dao brought with him every time also proved this. He only brought 3 to 5 chickens each time. But this time, Chen Dao brought 15 of them at once, which made Li Hu wonder whether this blood feather chicken was as difficult to catch as Chen Dao said. Chapter 123, Enough Confidence. My friend, are there too many blood feather chickens? Li Hu calculated in his mind that Li Ying would soon be an 8th grade warrior. According to his experience, the number of blood feather chickens needed to break through from an 8th grade warrior to a 7th grade warrior was only about 10. Chen Dao brought 15 blood feather chickens at once, which made Li Hu at a loss as to what to do with them. A lot. Chen Dao glanced at Li Hu and said, "Master Li and Sister Ying may not need so many blood feather chickens, but what about others?" Others? Li Hu was stunned, as if he thought of something. Chen Dao continued, 20 taels per blood feathered chicken. Master Li should be well aware that this is a very good deal. Master Li can definitely buy these chickens and then resell them. Yes. Li Hu slapped his head, as if he had suddenly realized something. He had previously subconsciously thought that blood feather chickens were extremely effective and rare, so he had always kept the secret of blood feather chickens and was unwilling to let others know of their existence. Now, after Chun Dao reminded him, he remembered that having more blood feather chickens wasn't a problem at all. On the contrary, for him, the more, the better. He could spend 20 taels to buy blood feather chickens and sell them for at least 30 taels. If he did well, 50 taels wouldn't be a problem. Li Hu's eyes suddenly lit up when he thought of this. One blood feather chicken could earn 30 taels of silver. If he bought all 15 blood feather chickens, wouldn't he be able to earn 450 taels? Even for a person like Li Hu, 450 taels of silver is not a small amount. After all, he only opened a martial arts school, and his family background was far from comparable to those of the big families in Tailankiemo. Young Master Chun, are you really willing to hand over this blood feather chicken business to me, Li? Li Hu asked uncertainly. If he were Chun Dao, he would never give the blood feather chicken to other people to sell. After all, the profit was too great. Certainly. Chun Dao nodded confidently. He was willing to let Wu Han handle the white feather chicken business, and naturally he was willing to let Li Hu handle the blood feather chicken business. After all, it was too troublesome for him to sell it personally, and it was easy to be targeted. Thank you so much, Mr. Chun. Liungria Grinat. With the blood feather chicken business, his Fuhu boxing gym had a steady stream of income and the confidence to continuously train martial artists. Master Li, young friend Chun. Just as Li Hu was beaming, Su Jiwen, who had been listening to the two men's conversation, couldn't hold back any longer and asked directly, "Excuse me, what's so special about this blood feather chicken? Why is it worth 20 taels of silver?" Hearing this, Li Hu and Chun Dao looked at each other and smiled. "Your Excellency, you may not know this blood-feathered chicken. It is truly extraordinary." Li Hu did not hide it and said directly to Su Jiwen, "This chicken seems to have the blood of a demon beast. Its blood is extremely beneficial to warriors, and the chicken has the effect of slowly nourishing qi and blood. It actually has such an effect." Su Jiwen couldn't help but widen his eyes and asked, "How does this chicken compare to the medicinal herbs?" "Far better than medicinal herbs," Li Hu said confidently. "The county magistrate should know that I was only a peak 8th grade warrior before. It was because of consuming the blood-feathered chicken that I was able to advance to the 7th grade in a short period of time. My daughter is the same. After consuming the blood-feathered chicken for only half a month, she is already close to the 8th grade." Su Jiwen couldn't help but take a deep breath. If Li Hu hadn't lied to him, then the effect of this blood-feather chicken was indeed amazing, and it was well worth the price of 20 taels of silver. No, even its effect was far higher than its selling price. You know, a portion of medicinal herbs used by a 9th grade warrior costs at least 20 taels of silver, and if a 9th grade warrior wants to break through to the 8th grade with the help of medicinal herbs, he needs to use at least 10 portions of medicinal herbs. Although Su Jiwen did not know the specific effects of the blood-feather chicken, judging from Li Hu's confident speech, the effect of the blood-feather chicken must be much better than medicinal herbs. By comparing the two, you can know how much this blood-feather chicken is worth at 20 taels. I didn't expect that Mr. Chun could catch such a unique breed of chicken. Su Jiwen looked at Chun Dao deeply. It goes without saying that the blood-feather chicken, a unique chicken breed that can help warriors increase their blood and qi, must come from Kangmang Mountain. Anyone who can enter Kangmang Mountain to capture prey and escape unscathed is definitely not a simple person. Your Excellency is so kind. Chun Dao just smiled and did not explain to Su Jiwen the origin of the blood-feather chicken. Li Hu couldn't help but ask hopefully, "Friend Chun, I've already reached the 7th rank. The effect of the blood-feather chicken is already negligible for me. I wonder if you have any other chicken breeds that might be even more effective. Of course, there are chicken breeds that are better." Chun Dao thought to himself that the red blood chicken, the next stage evolved from the blood feather chicken, was a chicken breed that Chun Dao could be sure would be even more effective than the blood feather chicken and would even be effective against 7th grade warriors. However, Chun Dao didn't tell Li Hu explicitly, but simply said, "I'll pay more attention next time I go into the mountains. If I can find a better chicken breed, I'll let you know as soon as possible." "Then I'll trouble you, Mr. Chun." Li Hu smiled contentedly. "Mr. Chun, it's not easy for you to come to the martial arts gym. Would you like to stay here and have a simple meal?" "No." Chun Dao took the 300 taels of silver from Liang, stood up, and said, I have something else to do, so I won't stay long. After saying that, Chun Dao stood up and led Chun Cheng out of the Fuhu boxing gym. After Chun Dao left, Su Jiwen turned and stared into Li Hu's eyes, saying, Master Li, you didn't keep our promise. Are you talking about telling Mr. Chen the truth about the Zhu family's extermination? Li Hu smiled and said, Your Excellency, don't worry. I can guarantee that Chun Xiaoyu will never have any connection with the Yuan and Fang families. Li Hu had investigated Chun Dao and knew that Chun Dao was just an ordinary farmer from Chunjia village outside the city and would definitely not have any connection with the big forces in the county. Even so, you shouldn't have told him that. Su Jiwen said in a deep voice that the matter of exterminating the Zhu family was an absolutely secret matter. Once it was leaked, it would definitely cause hostility from the Yuan and Fang families towards him and Li Hu, and even lead to a conflict. Young Master Chun is no ordinary person. Li Hu's eyes were deep as he asked, Didn't the county master notice this? Whether facing me, the master of Fuhu Pavilion, or you, the county master, young friend Chun remained composed, without a trace of fear or dread on his face. The county master should know exactly what this means. You mean, Su Jiwen pondered, does Chun Dao have enough confidence? Chapter 124 Monster? Su Jiwen's eyes showed a thoughtful look. If an ordinary person suddenly meets a big shot like the county magistrate, he will inevitably be restrained, nervous, and terrified. However, Chun Dao's performance just now was completely different from these states. When facing the county magistrate, Su Jiwen, Chun Dao's expression was very calm, without any trace of uneasiness or restraint on his face. When he spoke, his words were also well organized, without any sense of embarrassment. This shows that Chun Dao is either ignorant and fearless, or he has enough confidence. Considering Li Hu's attitude towards Chun Dao, Su Jiwen felt that it was most likely the latter. Good. Li Hu nodded and said, I wonder if the county master has noticed the cat-like and bear-like creature on Chun Xiaoyu's shoulder. Su Jiwen noted that. Of course, he also saw the small, round-faced creature on Chun Dao's shoulder. Ever since Li started practicing martial arts, he has had an extremely keen sense of danger. This intuition has saved Li's life numerous times. Li Hu said slowly, When I first met Qin Xiaoyu, the cat-like animal on his shoulder gave me an extremely dangerous feeling. Now, I'm already a 7th-rank warrior, and my strength has improved a lot since I last met Qin Xiaoyu, but I still feel danger. You mean? Su Jiwen's eyes flickered. That cat-like animal, is it a demon beast? Ordinary wild beasts, even beasts like big insects and blind bears, can hardly pose a threat to a 7th-grade warrior. The only animals that can make Li Hu feel a sense of danger are monsters. I don't know. Li Hu shook his head and said, regardless of whether it's a demon beast or not, that cat-like animal is definitely not weak. Moreover, young Master Chun is also a warrior himself. Should the county master have noticed this? Su Jiwen noted that when Chun Dao walked, he had the gait of a dragon and a tiger. His whole body was full of energy and blood, and his face was rosy in the cold winter. These manifestations were the external characteristics of a warrior. Not only Chun Dao, but also the Iron Tower-like man standing behind Chun Dao was a warrior. Mr. Chun is a warrior himself and has a powerful pet. Doesn't the county magistrate think that pulling Mr. Chun onto our boat will only benefit us and not harm us? Li Hu asked in return. Su Jiwen noted that Tao Gu Fun. Just as Li Hu said, if Chun Dao had no connection with the Yuan and Fang families, winning him over would indeed be more beneficial to their side. After all, Chun Dao is not only mysterious and powerful, but also... Su Jiwen looked at the chicken coop on the ground. From a conversation between Chun Dao and Li Hu just now, it was not difficult to hear that this was not the first time they had traded blood feather chickens. In other words, Chun Dao can provide a stable supply of blood feather chickens, and blood feather chickens are far more effective for warriors than medicinal herbs. This means that with blood feather chickens, more warriors can be trained at a lower cost. At this moment, Su Jiwen suddenly thought of Zhang He. Although Zhang He was once a refugee, he had considerable abilities. After the incident that wiped out the Zhu family, his loyalty to Su Jiwen was also quite high. If Zhang He could be trained to become a warrior... Master, County Master, Zhang He is here to visit. As soon as Zhang He was mentioned, he arrived. Just as Su Jiwen was thinking, Wei Ge led Zhang He into the backyard of the martial arts hall. Greetings to the county master, and to Master Li. Zhang He clasped his fists and saluted the two of them. Zhang He is here? Come and sit down. Li Hu doesn't seem to have the aloof air of a big shot. No matter who he is facing, he always has a smile on his face. He beckoned Zhang He to sit down beside him, then asked, Is the government office busy today? There's nothing to be busy about. All the detectives in the Yamen are under the command of Chief Constable Yuan. It's not my turn to do anything. Zhang He casually glanced at the chicken coop on the ground. The chicken in the coop was the red-feathered chicken he had seen at the city gate before. How sharp are Li Hu and Su Jiwen's eyes? He immediately noticed Zhang He's gaze and asked, Why? Have you seen this kind of chicken? Indeed, I have seen it. Zhang He nodded and told the truth. I just saw it briefly at the north gate. I see. Li Hu and the others suddenly realized something, and Su Jiwen said, Master Li, I wonder what you plan to do with these blood-feathered chickens. Su Jiwen has already set his sights on this batch of blood-feathered chickens and plans to buy some and give them to Zhang He so that he can train Zhang He into a warrior as soon as possible. Li Hu thought for a moment and replied, I plan to keep 5 for Ingzi to practice martial arts with, and as for the rest, I will sell them all. How about selling me some? Su Jiwen asked. Of course, no problem. Li Hu said readily. Just tell me how many you want, my lord. Let's start with 5. Become. Thus, the distribution of the 15 blood-feathered chickens was complete. Li Hu kept 5 for Li Ying to practice martial arts with, and Su Jiwen bought 5 for Zhang He at the cost price of 20 taels each. As for the remaining 5, Li Hu planned to sell it and open up the market first. After sending Su Jiwen and Zhang He away, Li Hu called Han Ming to the backyard and instructed him, Mengzi, go notify the owners of the Hantan Boxing Gym and the Batui Martial Arts Gym and ask them to come over. Tell them I have something good to share with them. Yes. Han Ming left quickly. At the same time, Chunda and others had already arrived at the door of Yuan's pharmacy. After signaling Chunda and others to wait for him outside, Chundao took Qin Sheng into the pharmacy. There were not many people in the pharmacy. The shopkeeper was sitting behind the counter, counting on his money. When he saw Chundao come in, a gleam of light suddenly flashed in his eyes. This young man was none other than Chundao, whom he had previously defined as a fat sheep. Shopkeeper, do you have coxcomb, blood bamboo shoots, blood pine, and duckweed for sale? Chundao walked to the counter and asked. To avoid alerting Chundao, the shopkeeper didn't look at him for too long. He quickly withdrew his gaze and took out 3 medicinal herbs from the cabinet behind him and placed them on the counter. Coxcomb is 5 taels of silver each. Blood pine is 5 taels of silver per tael. Blood bamboo shoots are 10 taels of silver per section, and duck tongue grass is 10 when per plant. How many do you need? So expensive? Chundao couldn't help but be secretly surprised. For Xiao Yuan to advance to a blood claw red panda, she needed to be fed with blood bamboo shoots for at least 7 days, which was 70 taels of silver. The blood claw chicken is upgraded to the iron feather chicken, which also needs to be fed with coxcomb for 7 days, which costs 35 taels of silver to cultivate an iron feather chicken. This cost made Chundao secretly groan in his heart. Even if he used all the money from selling 15 blood feather chickens to buy medicinal materials, he could only cultivate less than 10 iron feather chickens. The shopkeeper looked up at Chundao, seemingly able to read his inner thoughts. Coxcomb, blood pine, and blood bamboo shoots are all medicinal herbs used by warriors, so they're naturally not cheap. Chapter 125 Precious Blood. Hearing this, Chundao nodded noncommittally. After thinking for a moment, he said, I need 7 blood bamboo shoots, 7 coxcombs, and 5 ounces of blood pine wood. As for duck tongue grass, I need 300 plants. The shopkeeper's eyes lit up instantly when he heard this. This man was indeed a big fat sheep, as he had imagined. The shopkeeper quickly picked up the abacus and began to calculate. 7 blood bamboo shoots, 70 taels of silver, 7 coxcombs, and 5 taels of blood pine wood, 60 taels of silver, 300 duck tongue grass plants, 3 taels of silver, a total of 133 taels. Good. Chundao took out the silver and handed it to the shopkeeper. After carefully checking the herbs, he wrapped them in a cloth bag. Qin Sheng carried the bag and left the pharmacy. Watching Chundao's departing figure, the shopkeeper beckoned over a shop assistant and said, Go inform Qin Jiang of the Black Tiger Gang that a fat sheep has appeared. After that, the shopkeeper called another clerk and said, Go keep an eye on those two people. The shopkeeper's surname is Yuan, and his given name is Yuan Hua. It is not difficult to tell from this surname that the shopkeeper is from the Yuan family, but he does not intend to tell the Yuan family about this fat sheep, because if he tells the Yuan family, most of the oil and water from this fat sheep will have to be handed over to the family. If he cooperates with the people from the Black Tiger gang, he, Yuan Hua, can take most of it. Soon, the two shop assistants took action separately. One ran to inform the people from the Black Tiger gang, and the other secretly watched the whereabouts of Chun Dao and others. Perhaps the guy was too familiar with tracking, and Chun Dao didn't even notice his tracking. He just went to the grain store and cloth store to buy the necessary daily necessities according to his plan. While Chun Dao was making his purchases in the county yamen, in the room belonging to the county master Su Jiwen said to Zhang He, who had followed him back to the yamen, "Go investigate that young man named Chun Dao. Try to be as discreet as possible so that Chun Dao doesn't notice." Su Jiwen wanted to investigate Chun Dao just to get more information about him, not to make enemies with him. Therefore, Zhang He's investigation had to be covert so as not to arouse Chun Dao's disgust. "Don't worry, Your Excellency. I understand." Zhang He clasped his fists in response, then looked at the blood-feathered chicken placed in the room, his eyes flashing. "County Master, rest assured." Before Zhang He could finish, Su Jiwen laughed and said, "I bought this blood-feathered chicken just for you. With the help of this blood-feathered chicken, I believe you will be able to become a warrior in no time. By then, you will naturally be able to compete with Yuan Jiang." Although Su Jiwen successfully eliminated the Zhu family, the three major families still had great influence in the county government. It could be said that in the entire county government, except for him, the county magistrate and Zhang He and others, everyone else obeyed the orders of the Yuan family and the Feng family. In this case, it was extremely difficult for Su Jiwen to control the entire county government. Therefore, he urgently needs Zhang He to become stronger, at least to have a certain influence in the group of detectives. "Thank you, County Master," Zhang He said with gratitude. "I will definitely live up to the County Master's expectations." Fu boxing jeep pseudonym Backyard. Chui Mang, who was invited by Li Hu, looked at the bowl of blood in front of him and couldn't help frowning. Although Chui Mang looked strong, he was not a savage who ate raw meat and drank blood. Why did Li Hu use this thing to treat him? Zhang He was also confused. Just now, Han Meng, the second disciple of Fu Hu Boxing Gym, ran to his Batue martial arts gym and asked to see him. After meeting him, he said that Li Hu had something good to share with him. He thought it was something good, so he ran over in a hurry without even dealing with the things in the martial arts gym. The result is this. After all, Zhang He was a well-known figure in Taiping County. His food might not be very good, but at least he had enough meat. But Li Hu treated him with a bowl of blood? I, Zhang He, am not some wild man who came out of the forest. I really can't drink this bloody blood. Li Hu observed the two men's performance calmly and said with a smile, "The two museum masters must be very confused." "Nonsense." Chui Meng rolled his eyes and said, "Masterly, are you trying to make fun of me? I came all excited to see you, and you treated me to a bowl of blood?" In other words, Li Hu was very powerful and his status was equal to his own. If it were someone else, Chui Meng would have been angry long ago. Li Hu's way of hospitality was really contemptuous and even insulting. "Master Chui, don't be anxious." Li Hu still had that smile on his face. "You might as well try this chicken blood, then you'll know if I'm just kidding you." Seeing that Li Hu didn't look like he was joking, Chui Meng frowned and became suspicious. Li Hu was so confident. Could it be that the blood in this bowl was really unusual? Chui Meng subconsciously picked up the bowl and sniffed it, and found that the blood in the bowl was indeed a bit special. Not only did it not have any fishy smell, but it had a refreshing fragrance. "Then I'll try it." Chui Meng didn't dare drink too much and just took a sip. As a small mouthful of chicken blood was swallowed into his stomach, Chui Meng's eyes suddenly lit up. Could this blood be the blood of a demon beast? Chui Meng carefully felt the changes in his body, and his eyes became brighter and brighter. The moment the chicken blood entered his stomach, a warm current rose from his stomach and then spread to his whole body, making Chui Meng feel warm all over, as if he was in summer. Zhang He drank a mouthful of chicken blood with half belief and half doubt, and then his eyes lit up. "This is what I meant by sharing the benefits with you." Li Hu, who had seen the performance of the two people, said with a smile that he had personally experienced the effect of the blood-feather chicken blood and was not afraid that the two would not take the bait. Chui Meng and Zhang He, likely who before them, are all peak-level 8th grade warriors. The blood feather chicken is undoubtedly extremely tempting to them who are in urgent need of breaking through to the 7th grade. As expected, Chui Meng, who understood the effect of chicken blood, didn't care whether he was eating raw meat and drinking blood. He drank the chicken blood in the bowl in one gulp. After drinking a whole bowl of chicken blood, Chui Meng felt endless energy surging in his body. His face flushed red, and he couldn't help but shouting. He took a stance in the backyard and started practicing his family's martial arts, the mountain-shaking fist. Zhang He on the other side was no exception. He stood up directly from the chair and performed his own powerful leg technique. While venting his energy, he was also strengthening his own qi and blood. Call! After a long while, Chui Meng put away his fists and feet, his eyes bright as light bulbs. After drinking a bowl of chicken blood, in just a short moment, he felt that he was closer to the 8th level. Masterly, Chui Meng looked at Li Hu and apologized with a fist clasp. Please forgive me, old Chui, for my disrespect just now. Zhang He's eyes also lit up, and he clasped his fists and said, Thank you, Master Li, for sharing your precious blood. Chapter 126 The Dog Enters. Precious blood. This is how Zhang He evaluated this bowl of blood. Just one bowl of blood has increased his 8th grade peak blood and energy by a little bit. If he had a few more bowls, wouldn't it be? Zhang He looked at Li, who with burning eyes, and said, Master Li, where did this precious blood come from? Chui Meng also looked at Li, who with burning eyes. For him, who had been stuck at the peak of the 8th rank for a long time, breaking through the 7th rank was undoubtedly the most important thing. Nothing more. The precious blood provided by Li, who gave him hope of breaking through to the 7th level. Li Hu didn't seem surprised by the two's eagerness. In fact, when he drank the blood of the blood feather chicken for the first time, his performance was not much better than Chui Meng and Zhang He. Ingzi, bring the things over here. Li Hu clapped his hands, and Li Ying brought the blood-feathered chicken carcass from the kitchen. Chui Meng and Zhang He looked at the chicken corpse that Li Ying was carrying, feeling a little confused. In their opinion, blood with such miraculous effects should come from some ferocious monster. But what about this chicken in front of them that is no bigger than a palm? Just as the two were puzzled, Li Hu spoke up. This is a breed of chicken that I accidentally found. It's quite unique. I'm sure you two have already experienced the effects of its blood. Chui Meng and Zhang He nodded without hesitation. They had personally experienced the effect of chicken blood, which was excellent. Even for them, two peak 8th grade warriors, it had a very strong effect. In addition to chicken blood, the effect of chicken is also extraordinary. Li Hu continued, the chicken meat of this chicken has the effect of slowly nourishing qi and blood. Its effect is no less than that of chicken blood. Upon hearing this, Chui Meng and Zhang He's eyes lit up, and they asked in unison, Really? Of course it's true. Li Hu nodded as if it was true. It was thanks to this blood-feathered chicken that Li broke through from the peak of the 8th rank to the 7th rank in less than a month. After saying that, Li Hu replicated Su Jiwen's previous actions, reached out and grabbed a corner of the stone table, exerting a little force. Crack! A corner of the blue stone table was broken off in an instant. Chui Meng and Zhang He's pupils shrank. Li Hu, like them, was previously stuck at the peak of the 8th rank, but now he was already a 7th rank warrior. At this moment, the two men looked at the corpse of the blood-feathered chicken with increasingly passionate gazes. Even when looking at their beautiful concubines, they had never had such longing gazes. May I ask, Master Li? Chui Meng clasped his fists towards Li Hu and asked, Where can I buy this chicken? Li Hu smiled and said, Good chickens are hard to find. As I'm sure you two know, this chicken is not easy to buy. As soon as these words were spoken, disappointment immediately appeared on Chui Meng and Zhang He's faces. At this time, Li Hu continued, I am also quite lucky. I recently bought a total of 5 blood-feathered chickens and plan to share them with you too. Really? The disappointment on Chui Meng and the others' faces instantly vanished. Although 5 chickens weren't a large number, the effect of these chickens was far superior to that of herbs. If they could buy all of them, it may not be impossible to help yourself break through the 7th level. Li Hu nodded with a smile and continued. Apart from this blood-feathered chicken that has already been slaughtered, I still have 4 left. I plan to sell them to the 2 owners. Chui Meng and Zhang He exchanged glances, each revealing hostility in the other's eyes. There were only 4 blood feather chickens in total. If the other party bought more, they would have less. In other words, the two are now competitors. Masterly, Chui Meng quickly said, no matter how much this chicken costs, old Chui, will take it all. Master Chui is a little too greedy. Zhang He said sarcastically. Masterly invited both of us here, obviously intending to share the benefits equally, but you rethinking of taking it all for yourself. Aren't you afraid of choking to death? I can't choke to death. In the face of the blood feather chicken's remarkable effects, Chui Meng's face was as thick as a city wall. This chicken is only the size of a palm. Old Chui, can eat 10 of them in one meal every day, for it is just for tasting. Fuck you, Chui Meng. Don't you care about your dignity anymore? What are you saying? Lao Chui just wanted to eat some chickens. What's wrong with me? Looking at the two people arguing, Li Hu hurriedly said with a look of confusion, Two masters, please don't hurt the harmony. Hearing this, both of them stopped arguing and stared at Li Hu. Master Li, please tell me, how are you going to sell this chicken? Kui Man asked. He also knew that with Zhang He here, it was impossible for him to eat 4 blood feather chickens by himself. He said that before just to try it out. 2 for each. Li Hu gave his own distribution method without hesitation, and then said, but you two should also know that it is not easy to obtain these chickens, so the price. Li Hu let out a long tail sound, and Chui Meng immediately said, Master Li, just tell me what you want. As long as the price is within my reach, I will definitely buy it. I've been waiting for you to say this. Li Hu's eyes rolled, and he quoted his price, 50 taels each. 50 taels? Chui Meng and Zhang, he quickly calculated in their minds that the medicinal materials used by an 8th grade warrior cost about 30 taels of silver proportion, while medicinal materials used by an 8th grade peak warrior who broke through to the 7th grade cost about 50 taels of silver proportion. This blood feather chicken is far more effective than medicinal herbs, but it only sells for 50 taels of silver. It's really a good deal. I bought it. After a little consideration, Chui Meng agreed to the price, and Zhang He agreed without much hesitation. In the face of the temptation of breaking through to the 7th level, the expenditure of 100 taels of silver is nothing. Thus, the distribution of the 4 blood feather chickens was finalized. Li Ying gave 2 chickens to each of them. As for the money for the chickens, Chui Meng and Zhang, he obviously didn't bring so much silver with them, so they had to wait until they returned and asked the people from the martial arts school to send it over. Of course, Li Hu was not afraid that they would default on their debt. Both of them were the owners of martial arts schools and were big shots in Taiping County. They had no shortage of the 100 taels of silver, and it was impossible for them to default on their debt. Master Li, Zhang He, who had taken the 2 chickens, suddenly turned his eyes and looked at the blood-feathered chicken carcass that Li Ying had been holding. Would you like to sell this blood-drained chicken? Li Hu was stunned for a moment. This blood-feathered chicken that had been bled was specially brought to show the 2 people the effect of chicken blood. He had never thought of selling it, but he didn't expect Zhang He'd have set his eyes on it. You can sell it. After a pause, Li Hu said, it's just the price. How about 20 taels of silver? As soon as Zhang He mentioned the price, Chui Meng beside him immediately said, I'll give you 50 taels. Zhang He fell silent immediately. He was planning to take advantage of the situation, but he didn't realize that there was a bastard like Chui Meng next to him. Chapter 127 Invitation. 50 taels deal. A chicken that had been bled could be sold for 50 taels of silver. If Li Hu didn't sell it, he would be a fool. He was afraid that Chui Meng would go back on his word, so he quickly agreed. So, the blood feather chicken corpse, which was only half left, was handed over to Chui Meng. At this point, the whereabouts of the 5 blood feather chickens have been determined. Li Hu, who successfully sold the blood feather chicken at a high price, was in a good mood. With a smile on his face, he poured tea for Chui Meng and Zhang He. Chui Meng and Zhang He were also in a good mood. With only 100 or so taels of silver, they had the opportunity to break through to become a 7th grade warrior. This expense was completely worth it for them. Therefore, when they took the tea handed to them by Li Hu, the smiles on their faces never stopped. Master Li, Zhang He took a sip of tea and said, I wonder if this blood-feathered chicken will be available again in the future. Although the blood-feathered chicken was effective, Zhang He felt that 2 blood-feathered chickens might not be enough to help him break through to the 7th level. He was eager to get more blood-feathered chickens. Maybe not. Li Hu said ambiguously. As you two know, it's extremely difficult to obtain a unique breed of chicken like the blood feather chicken. I don't know if I can get one again. After saying that, Li Hu added, but don't worry, once there are new blood feather chickens, I will definitely notify you as soon as possible. Shui Meng and Zhang, he were relieved after hearing this. Li Hu's words meant that he had channels to obtain blood feather chickens, and the two of them also had a great hope of continuing to buy blood feather chickens from Li Hu. Not long after, Shui Meng and Zhang He, who were eager to enjoy the blood feather chicken, left contentedly. After the two left, Ling finally spoke up. Dad, aren't we selling it too expensive? Expensive? Not expensive at all. Li Hu laughed and said, Shui Meng and Zhang, he had been stuck in the 8th stage for a long time. Breaking through to the 7th stage is the most important thing for them. They don't know how much silver they've spent on this, but they still haven't been able to break through. At this moment, the blood feather chicken that could help them break through, let alone 50 taels each, even if it's 100 taels, I'm afraid they'll have to bite the bullet and buy it. Li Hu knew very well the desire of warriors to break through the realm. Just like him before, he was thinking day and night about how to break through the 7th level. But he always failed. At this time, the blood feather chicken that could help people strengthen their chi and blood and break through the 7th level appeared. It is no exaggeration to say that at that time, let alone Chun Dao's price of 20 taels of silver per chicken, even if he offered 50 taels, Li Hu would probably buy it without hesitation. Shui Meng and Zhang He's mentality is not much different from Li Hu's before. That's the truth, but Li Ying's heroic brows furrowed, and he asked, if Master Chui and Master Zhang knew we only paid 20 taels of silver for the blood feather chicken, would they be angry with us? Won't. Li Yu said firmly that his daughter was still too naive. She thought she was a black-hearted businessman because she earned 30 taels of silver from a blood-feathered chicken. But in fact, there is no business without fraud. Without enough profit, why would Li Hu be a businessman? Shui Meng and Zhang, he must have known this. So when Li Hu mentioned the price of 50 taels, they had no objection and agreed after a little consideration. While Li Hu was selling chickens, Chun Dao and his group's donkey carts, already filled with grain, salt, cloth, and other daily necessities, stopped in front of Bai Keatang's door. Nowadays, Chun Dao no longer needs to buy blood-clotting fruit at Bai Keatang, but he still likes to stay at Bai Keatang for a while every time he goes to the city. Does this door seem to have been hit? Looking at the slightly damaged gate of Bai Keatang, Chun Dao pondered for a moment and walked into Bai Keatang. Inside Bai Keatang, the shopkeeper Su Shihua was sitting behind the counter, dozing off, while Su Qiaoshi was sitting on a small stool, looking a little pale. "Miss Su," Chun Dao called out softly, and Su Qiaoshi woke up immediately. She breathed a sigh of relief when she saw that it was Chun Dao. Immediately, her eyes fixed on Xiao Yuan on Chun Dao's shoulder. "Madoka." Su Qiaoshi stretched out her hands, and Xiao Yuan, who was already very familiar with her, immediately jumped off Chun Dao's shoulders and was held in Su Qiaoshi's arms, whimpering happily in Su Qiaoshi's arms. At this time, Su Shihua also woke up from his doze, looked at Chun Dao, and said, "Young friend Chun is here." "Sopke persu." Chun Dao smiled and nodded, then said, "I heard there was a disaster in the county a while ago. Are you all right?" As soon as these words came out, Su Shihua couldn't help but think of the commotion caused by the refugees a few days ago. He said with lingering fear, "It's okay." Su Qiaoshi's face turned pale as she recalled the thrilling events of the previous night. That night, Su Qiaoshi almost thought that she was going to meet with an accident. Fortunately, in the end, no refugees rushed into Bai Keatang. But even so, Su Qiaoshi, who was frightened that night, was still terrified. She couldn't sleep for several days in a row, fearing that the chaos that broke out that night would happen again. "I'm glad you're okay." Chun Dao noticed the pale faces of the two men. He knew very well that Bai Keatang, which was closer to the North Gate, must have been affected on the day the refugees entered the city. Even if the people were fine, they must have been frightened. However, Chun Dao didn't continue talking about this matter. Instead, he sighed and said, "This world is so chaotic. It's not safe anywhere." Hearing this, Su Shihua nodded in agreement. "Yes, I really don't know what's wrong with the world these days. There are refugees everywhere who can't make a living and don't care about their lives." Su Shihua, who has lived for most of his life, is very clear about the changes in the world. When he was young, Xia Kingdom was still peaceful and the society was well-ordered. But when he grew old, the world became more and more chaotic. Even the county town was hit by refugees and became an unsafe place. I don't know. Chun Dao pondered for a moment and said, "Does shopkeeper Su have any thoughts about moving to another place?" Change place. Su Shihua was stunned for a moment and asked, "Where to change to?" "We are Chunjia village." Chun Dao said that there was no doctor in Chunjia village, and villagers could only rely on themselves when they got sick. If they could handle it, they would be fine, but if they couldn't, then they would die. This is also the reason why there are very few elderly people in Chunjia village, and it is also the reason why Chun Dao suddenly had the idea of inviting Su Shihua to live in Chunjia village. An experienced doctor is a rare and precious treasure in this era. If Su Shihua can live in Chunjia village for a long time, it will definitely be a great thing for Chunjia village. Chunjia village? Su Shihua frowned and thought for a long time, but couldn't remember where Chunjia village was. So he asked, "Is there anything special about this Chunjia village?" Chapter 128, I am already an 8th grade person. There's nothing special about Chunjia village. Chun Dao shook his head and said, "But if shopkeeper Su and Miss Su are willing to move to Chunjia village, I can guarantee your safety and also provide you with accommodation." Guaranteed safety? Su Shihua's heart moved. It was undeniable that after experiencing the refugees entering the city that day, he no longer had much confidence in the safety of the county town. But to move to Chunjia village outside the city, Su Shihua still didn't dare to make a decision easily. "Mr. Chun." At this time, Su Qiaoshi, who had been rubbing her little round head, looked at Chun Dao and asked, "Can you really guarantee our safety?" "Certainly." Chun Dao nodded without hesitation. Now that his family was extremely powerful and he himself was an 8th rank warrior, it would be no problem for him to ensure the safety of Su Shihua and his grandson. Seeing Chun Dao's confident expression, Su Shihua couldn't help but ask, "How can you guarantee this?" Hearing this, Chun Dao thought for a moment, went to the corner of the house, grabbed a piece of wood, and squeezed it hard. Crack! The wood broke instantly under Chun Dao's great force, and clear fingerprints could be seen at the broken part. Su Shihua and Sui's pupils shrank. The piece of wood that Chun Dao grabbed was not a rotten piece of wood, but a wooden stick used to pound medicine in Baikayatang. It was much stronger than ordinary wood. But Chun Dao broke it with just one grip. This kind of strength was truly shocking. Could it be that young friend Chun is a warrior? Su Shihua asked in disbelief. Su Qiaoshi also stared at Chun Dao blankly, as if she didn't recognize Chun Dao anymore. When she first met Chun Dao was still an extremely thin boy. He came to the store to buy blood-clotting fruit, a medicinal herb that warriors looked down upon, just to gain a glimmer of hope of becoming a warrior. And now, Chun Dao easily broke a wooden stick used for pounding medicine. Doesn't this mean Chun Dao has become a warrior? To be honest, I'm already an 8th rank warrior. Chun Dao responded with a smile. When he said this, Su Shihua was completely stunned. What is the concept of an 8th grade warrior? You have to know that in Taiping County, a 9th grade warrior is already considered superior to others. As for an 8th grade warrior, that's at the level of a martial arts gym owner. And Chun Dao, a teenager who looks only 15 or 16 years old, possesses powers similar to that of a martial arts gym owner. This made Su Shihua completely confused. Not only Su Shihua, but even Su Qiaoshi was confused. The moment she realized that Chun Dao was a warrior, she subconsciously thought that Chun Dao was a 9th grade warrior of the lowest rank. Who would have thought? Chun Dao is not a 9th grade warrior, but an 8th grade one. Shopkeeper Su, do you now believe that I have the power to guarantee your safety? Chun Dao asked. I believe it. Susiwa nadid bigarisli. If even an 8th grade warrior could not guarantee their safety, then there would be no safe place in this huge Xia country. But Su Shihua thought for a moment and said, why did Chen Xiaoyu invite us to live in Chunjia village? Su Shihua knew very well that there would be no free lunch in the world, and if a pie really did fall from the sky, it would most likely be poisonous. To be fair, Su Shihua felt that his relationship with Chun Dao was far from the point where Chun Dao would protect him for nothing at any cost. So he couldn't help but suspect that Chun Dao had ulterior motives. Because our Chunjia village needs a doctor. Chun Dao responded, because there's no doctor in Chunjia village, the villagers have no choice but to rely on their bodies to treat their illnesses. That's why I came up with the idea of inviting shopkeeper Su to live in Chunjia village and treat the villagers. I see. Su Shihua nodded, all his doubts gone. And at the same time, he also had a better impression of Chun Dao. As an 8th grade warrior, he cared so much about the villagers. Chun Dao was the most unique warrior Su